Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to a time before soap had a brand name, where steam meant survival, and every bucket of hot water had to be wrestled into existence. Imagine the clatter of hooves on cobblestone, the flicker of torchlight, the overwhelming scent of lavender, mixed with unwashed humanity. Welcome to the world of a medieval bathhouse attendant. You're underpaid, underfed, and overworked, but don't worry, you'll be too busy hauling water and dodging noble tantrums to notice. Just a heads up, you probably won't survive this job past 40. Still, there's something oddly comforting about the rhythm of heat and herb, of skin and soot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bells start tolling before the first light cracks the edge of the sky hollow, and slow 5 deep groans from the monastery's tower. You groan in harmony, one eye still glued shut with sleep grit. Your cot is straw, your blanket smells vaguely of damp cheesecloth, and the air bites like a frost witch's kiss. Welcome to another glorious morning as an attendant at the communal bathhouse. You sit up, slowly, bones complaining like rusted hinges. Your legs are stiff from yesterday's lifting, scrubbing, and more lifting. You've dreamt of heated pillows and endless foot massages. Instead, you swing your feet into the frozen muck of the dirt floor. No choice. You've got exactly half an hour before the woodmaster arrives with a checklist longer than your patience. You wrap your wool tunic, tight tug on your hose, patchy in the worst places, and splash your face in the basin. The water's skinned over with ice. You break it like a cruel joke teeth chattering as the shock stings you awake. By the time you've yanked your leather boots on and jammed your hands into stiff gloves, the outside world is stirring. A donkey brays miserably in the distance. Someone somewhere is already shouting about turnips. But you're headed for fire. Your walk to the bathhouse is short and sludgy. The cobbled path from the servant quarters to the main compound is ankle deep in frozen filth, half-melted snow dung, the occasional chicken feather. You trudge, wondering how long it'll be before someone invents proper drainage, maybe in 1,000 years. The bathhouse looms ahead like a squat stone beast exhaling steam through its tiled roof. It's a 2-story structure with mismatched masonry smelling of damp moss and burnt rosemary. You unlock the heavy oak door with a rusted key and brace your shoulder against it to push inside. Darkness greets you first, then the smell, faint sulfur, boiled soap, and yesterday's regrets. You feel along the wall for the oil lamp you left on a shelf. One spark later, a yellow glow sputters to life, casting long shadows across the tiled floor and buckets stacked like ancient toadstools. Time to begin. Your first task, always the same fire before flesh. You make your way to the back of the bathhouse, to the furnace room, your domain. The hypocaust chamber sits low and wide, its soot-blackened ceiling like the inside of a dragon's lungs. You crouch at the fire mouth and begin to stack dried beech logs in a crisscross pattern just like Master Volker taught you. Air between heat within, he always mutters like a mantra. You strike flint to tinder, and soon the first embers crackle to life. Within minutes, heat begins to bloom. The floor above will start to warm. The walls will soon sweat, and you're already perspiring from the neck down. You keep feeding the fire, poking the logs just so. Get it wrong and the stones above won't heat evenly. That means lukewarm water. And lukewarm water means complaints. And complaints mean less coin in the tip bowl. Not that you see much of that bowl anyway. Once the furnace is breathing properly, you roll your sleeves up and head back into the front chamber. The water haulers will arrive soon, grumbling, tired, and eager to gossip. But for now, the place is quiet. Peaceful, almost. You light the main lanterns, thick tallow candles perched in iron sconces. They flicker to life, casting a golden haze across the mosaic tiles. The artist who laid them must have had a cruel sense of humor naked gods dancing goats, and what appears to be a cabbage wrestling a lion. You never ask. You move on to check the lye vats, thick ceramic tubs where yesterday's clothes were soaked. You stir the mixture with a paddle that smells permanently of boiled onions. The lye is made from wood ash and old urine. Technically sterile, horrifically fragrant. By now, the frost on the windows is starting to melt into dew. The temperature inside climbs, slowly filling the space with a misty warmth that's almost cozy if you ignore the stench. Your first visitor of the day arrives not through the front door, but from a side passage. It's Gerwin the barber surgeon, a man whose breath smells like cloves and whose fingers always seem stained with something red. He nods at you like you're both part of some secret society of early risers and bodily fluids. He brings herbs today, yarrow marjoram, and something suspiciously labeled ointment for vigor. You pretend not to see the leeches squirming in the jar he tucks under the table. You'll have a full house today, he says, already setting out his razors and bone hooks. Rain makes them filthy. Filthy brings them here. You nod not because you agree, but because you've already accepted your fate. While he mutters into his mustache, you prep the client benches with oiled cloths and little wooden bowls. Some will be filled with scented oils later. Others will collect toenail clippings, loose teeth, or worse. A raven caws from outside. It's almost time. You brace yourself. The fire's roaring now. The tiles are warming beneath your soles. The first buckets of water will be sloshed in any minute. The noble women will arrive, demanding silence. The peasants will snore in the warm steam. Someone will faint, someone else will flirt, and someone will definitely clog the waste trough again. Just another day in paradise. The clang of the side gate jolts you. That'll be the water hauler's 3 scrawny boys and a girl who walks like she spent her life balancing barrels on her head, which, to be fair, she probably has. They're all younger than you by a few years, but somehow look older. That's what hauling water does to a body. Or maybe it's just the smell. You slide the bolt and swing the door open just as one of the boys loses his grip and sends a half-full bucket of water crashing across the stone. It splashes across your feet. It's not even warm. You make a face that says this is fine, but really means if you do that again, I will replace your breakfast porridge with lye. Sorry, master, the boy mutters. You're not a master. But they call you that anyway. Half out of habit, half out of sarcasm. Inside they fall into the usual rhythm. The girl Marta starts ferrying pails toward the wooden basins while the others lift, pour, refill, and curse under their breath. You monitor them like a grumpy conductor of a soggy orchestra. Water is hauled from the communal well 2 blocks away, each trip a gauntlet of muddy alleys, slippery cobbles, and nosy livestock. The bathhouse doesn't have plumbing. It has youth labor, and a surprising number of buckets with hairline cracks. You step aside as Marta brushes past with a full load. She smells faintly of mint. That means she's been chewing leaves again, which she swears keeps her from vomiting when someone brings in a particularly fragrant customer. You tried it once, it didn't work. The tubs begin to fill slowly. There are 6, 2 large ones for communal soaking, 3 smaller for private use reed nobles, and 1 narrow marble basin for foot washing, though it's mostly used for accidental rinses of chamber pots. You don't ask. You just empty it. You check the temperature of the water. Still too cold. You signal one of the boys to start ladling in heated water from the brass kettle at the back. It's not quite boiling, but hot enough to make them wince. The heat from the hypocaust floor rises steadily now. It's a clever system if you think about it. Hot air from the furnace flows under the stone floor up through little flues in the wall. A bit Roman, a bit genius, and a whole lot of pain when something goes wrong. Once the vent in the south room clogged with soot and the entire chamber turned into a medieval sauna of death. 2 old men fainted. One thought it was a religious vision. He still comes back weekly, hoping for a repeat. You cross the main room to adjust the window slats. You keep them tilted open just enough to let out steam, but not enough for the pigeons to wander in. Last week, one flew into the hot tub, panicked, and almost drowned before flapping out and knocking over a basket of drying herbs. The smell of wet bird and singed thyme still haunts your dreams. The scent in the bathhouse now is better. Not pleasant, but better. A heady mix of warm pine, old leather, and something that might be citrus or just fermented apple. You step back to the lye basin to check the soap batch from yesterday. It's settled nicely, thick, chalky, and slippery. Not that anyone cares about lather. Most clients still think dirt is what keeps the bad humors in. The soap is more for status. Look, I'm foamy. I must be noble. You scrape the top layer into smaller bowls set aside for the higher-paying clients. The rest gets diluted into a frothy soup and ladled into wooden jugs. It stings the eyes, strips the skin, and somehow smells vaguely of garlic. Your attention turns next to the scrubbing cloths, wool-wrapped nettle brushes, wooden paddles wrapped in linen, and rough bristle mitts for those who prefer exfoliation via mild injury. You hang them neatly sorted by ferocity. Gentle, moderate, full-on medieval vengeance. There's no sign of Gerwin the barber surgeon now. He's wandered off to prep his corner, likely humming and sharpening something with unnecessary enthusiasm. Outside, the bell from the church tower tolls again, this time signaling mid-morning. That means the real clients are coming. You barely have time to finish setting the bowls of dried herbs, lavender, marjoram, even crushed rose petals, when the door creaks open with practiced theatricality. The first noble of the day glides in like she owns the place. Because technically, she might. Lady Breda of Stonewick. Tall, pinched, and scented like a perfumed ransom note. Behind her trail 2 handmaids and enough fabric to upholster a tent. She gives you a look, half disdain, half expectation. Warm, she says, not asking. You nod and gesture toward the private basin, freshly filled and draped in clean linens. The water's temperature is precisely scald your thighs hot, just how she likes it. She sweeps in with the air of a woman who has never poured a bucket herself. Her handmaids begin unpacking things, hair combs made from horn, a tiny vial of saffron oil, enough to buy a sheep, and an ivory scraper. You quietly fetch her bowl of rose-scented soap and resist the urge to cough near it. Next through the door is a rotund merchant with a walking stick, and a voice like a goose being throttled. He greets you by name bad sign and asks if there's still room in the large tub. You nod, and he proceeds to disrobe with absolutely no shame, humming a tune about turnip wine and kicking his boots into the corner like a toddler. You fetch more heated water top off the tubs and try not to gag when the merchant's feet hit the surface with a slap that sounds like someone throwing meat on a counter. As the day unfolds, the bathhouse begins to pulse with life. People trickle in, clutching bundles of linen sacks of herbs, or occasionally a live chicken meant as barter. One man swears his hen cures boils. Historians still argue whether that's folk magic or poor poultry management. Some clients chat loudly. Others murmur. A few just soak in silence, eyes glazed, heads tipped back, pretending they're anywhere but here. You move among them like a shadow, silent, efficient, and slightly damp. By noon, the bathhouse hums with steam laughter and the occasional whimper when someone sits too close to the furnace pipe. You replace towels, stir tubs, and sidestep arguments over who used the mint oil without asking. You're not just an attendant, you're a referee diplomat and occasional amateur foot masseur, all for a slice of bread and the hope no one leaves a surprise in the hot basin. The day's still young and the worst is yet to come. You barely have a moment to breathe before the second rush begins. This wave, louder, smellier, and somehow more confident in their right to your attention. These are the commoners, the tradesmen, the journeymen, and the long-distance travelers with dusty cloaks and suspicious bags. You brace yourself like a ship's mast before a storm. The door creaks open, and in stumbles a trio of cobblers. They're already arguing loudly about who last borrowed someone's shears. Their voices echo off the tile, blending with the sound of sloshing water, and someone somewhere gargling mint tea. One of them, Osric, you think spots you and immediately thrusts a grimy hand toward a tub. That one's ours, right. You promised it last week, you didn't. You never promised tubs, but arguing would just extend this interaction, so you nod, motioning toward the left communal basin. It's got the warmest water and the fewest floaty things, for now. They strip with the casual speed of men used to communal nudity, tossing tunics and hose in a heap that radiates ode to cheese cellar. You hand them rough soap and a pair of bristle mitts, your second-level exfoliator since last time they complained the gentle ones were too ladylike. Osric dives in with a whoop, splashing half the tub across the floor. You sigh and toss straw down over the puddle so no one breaks a hip again. Soon the room's alive with motion. A carpenter named Emmerich arrives with 2 apprentices in tow. One limps dramatically, milking a splinter wound for sympathy. You give them the herbal foot soak and throw in extra marjoram. Not because you care, but because it helps mask the toe rot. Your favorite client of the day is next old Maida. She's somewhere between 60 and eternity, missing 3 teeth and armed with stories that could make a monk weep. She greets you with a wink and a slap on the arm, then proceeds to unwrap a bundle of dried lavender from her bodice with the solemnity of a saint presenting a relic. "Put this in my rinse," she says. "Last time you gave me sage, made my armpit smell like soup." You laugh. "Better than onion." "Not by much." She settles into a stool while you pour warm water over her hair, gently massaging in the soap paste. Maida has exactly 6 gray braids and knows if even one of them is twisted wrong. You focus. As you rinse and comb, she regales you with a tale about a chimney sweep who fell asleep in a barrel and woke up in the bishop's cellar. You have questions. You don't ask. The sun climbs higher. The air thickens with heat and humanity. Somewhere, a lute player starts plucking a tune out by the fountain, probably for coins, possibly for distraction. The bathhouse transforms into something between a sanctuary and a circus. You float between clients swapping mitts, replacing rinse bowls, and gently discouraging couples from attempting anything too romantic beneath the steam. Then comes the merchant caravan. 6 men, 3 women, and 1 boy who insists he's not with them even though he's wearing a matching tunic. They all reek of leather and cinnamon. The women ask for private tubs. The men argue over who gets the one with the smooth stones at the bottom. The boy just wants to nap in the corner. You split them across the chambers like a strategist. Private tub, communal basin, rinse bench, foot bath, boom, perfect. Until someone discovers there's only 1 bar of violet soap left. "What do you mean it's gone?" one merchant demands. "I saw it this morning." "Yes," you reply, gently wiping down a bench. And now it's afternoon. Time passes. Soap gets used. He stares at you as if you've confessed to stealing his horse. Eventually, a compromise is struck. Half gets lavender, the other half must endure the dreaded nettle balm. You try not to grin. The nettle balm stings a little. Okay, a lot. You glance around the room and admire your own work. Everyone is where they should be. The air is rich with herbal mist. The only sounds are soft murmurs, splashes, and 1 man loudly recounting how he once wrestled a goose with his bare hands. Classic bathhouse acoustics. And then the farmer arrives. You spot him from a distance. He's the kind of man who probably hasn't removed his boots in 6 days. Maybe more. He enters clutching a sack of beets and a thick stick you hope isn't a pet. "I need a full soak," he says, removing his hat and revealing a nest of something you don't want to name. You lead him toward the rinse station, an elevated bench where clients get the initial scrub. He sits, you brace yourself, and then the boots come off. The smell is biblical. Like moldy hay met expired cheese and formed a coalition. You do what must be done. You pour the lye water, slowly watching years of grime trickle away in rivulets. You scrub with the coarse mitt, ignore the squeals from the lice, and thank the saints above for the clove oil tucked in your sash. Midway through, the farmer frowns. You missed a toe. You didn't. It's missing. Historians still argue whether it ever existed. You say under your breath, he doesn't get the joke. You keep scrubbing. By the time he's cleanish, the crowd has swelled to capacity. Steam coils up like breath from the walls. The candlelight flickers gold across the damp faces of peasants, pilgrims, and prostitutes alike. Someone sneezes into a bowl of rinse water. You immediately replace it. Someone else slips near the soap shelf and lands butt first in a tub. The room erupts into laughter. Even Lady Brita in her silk robe allows herself a nose wrinkle of amusement. You catch a moment's peace in the corner near the furnace. You sip from your flask, just water, though you dream of mulled wine and lean against the wall. The stone is warm. Your arms ache. Your apron is soaked. But there's something oddly satisfying about the bustle. Here in this strange, half-sacred, half-sweaty space, people shed more than dirt. They gossip, confess, joke, flirt, surrender to warmth. For a few moments, everyone's equal in the steam, even the farmer. Especially the farmer, and you're the keeper of the heat. The morning rush is finally thinning, leaving behind a half-dozen soaking bodies, several questionable towels, and one nobleman still attempting to shave using a bronze mirror and your last bit of rosemary lather. You sidestep his splash zone and start collecting empty rinse bowls like a battlefield scavenger. You think about lunch. A thick crust of bread, maybe an onion. If fortune smiles, a wedge of cheese not entirely blue. But before you can even think of biting into anything, the door creaks open again. And this time, it's not nobles or tradesmen, it's the barber surgeon. He strides in like he owns the place, his apron already streaked with dried something you hope it's dye. Over his shoulder, he carries a bundle of tools that jangle ominously like a snake made of cutlery. His name is Gerwin, and while his methods are unorthodox, he's oddly popular. People love a man who can pull a rotten tooth, let out a few ounces of bad blood, and gossip about monks all in the same visit. Busy morning, he asks, placing his kit on the corner bench. Peasants. 3 cobblers. 1 onion-footed farmer. He nods, pulling out a short blade with a hooked tip. The usual. He sets up in his favorite spot beside the foot rinse basin and under the open window says it lets the humors out. You've never questioned it. You're pretty sure humors is just medieval code for whatever stinks. The first to approach him is a weaver with a swollen thumb and an unfortunate mustache. He asks for a minor letting to cure his foggy vision. Gerwin obliges, tying a cloth around the man's arm and pricking a vein with the delicacy of a man threading a needle in a windstorm. Blood spatters. The man smiles. You mop up the aftermath with practiced ease, tossing the stained linen into a bucket reserved for soaking unclean cloth. You mentally add it to the growing list of things you'd like to never touch again. Right after communal foot scrapers and that time with the eel. Next in line, a woman with a burn on her arm, probably from a cooking accident. Gerwin applies a paste of honey and crushed myrrh while lecturing on the benefits of goat milk poultices. You nod politely and refill her rinse bowl with warm chamomile water. She thanks you with a smile and a slice of dried apple, which you immediately pocket for later survival. Behind her, a wiry man with a limp waits, tapping his cane rhythmically. He says he's come for the rosewater infusion. Translation, he wants to be bathed and oiled like a noble, but only brought a chicken as payment. You accept the chicken. Lunch will now involve feathers. You guide the limping man to the private stall, well semi-private, as the curtain has a suspicious tear and the door doesn't quite close. Still, he seems pleased. You prepare a rinse of rosewater mint and a hint of vinegar, just enough to sting slightly. He sighs dramatically as you pour it over his shoulders, then asks if you can scrub his back just a little lower. You scrub slightly higher than requested, just to make a point. He tips you a boiled egg wrapped in cloth. Unexpected, but welcome. You glance out the nearest window. A line of clouds creeps in from the west, heavy and low-threatening rain. Rain, of course, means more mud. Mud means more clients. Clients mean more feet. Sigh. By early afternoon, the foot-soaking bench has turned into a confessional. Pilgrims, friars, and one man who swears he's walked from Paris, though he smells suspiciously local, are lined up for rinses and prayerful silence. A friar with a red nose and a suspicious jug asks you for extra nettle rinse for his travel sores. You oblige, pouring the stinging solution over his cracked heels. He hums a hymn while clutching a splintered rosary. Beside him, a barefoot woman clutches a folded parchment and a boiled turnip. She says she's here to cleanse before speaking to the abbess. You guide her gently to the wooden tub and hand her a linen cloth and your softest mitt. She scrubs with quiet determination, muttering prayers under her breath. You pause to consider how strange it all is, this ritual of soaking, scrubbing, steaming, equal parts physical and spiritual, a medieval baptism in lye and lemon balm. By now, the private room is occupied by Lady Brida's cousin, a lanky man with too much jewelry and not enough common sense. He's asked for fresh herbs every 10 minutes and insists you knock before every water pour. It's the etiquette of heat, he says. You've renamed him Sir Steeps-a-lot in your mind. Back in the main chamber, Gerwin continues his medical marathon. A boy with a toothache is next clenching a bit of leather as Gerwin yanks the offending molar with a sound not unlike a cork, exiting a bottle. The boy winces. You offer a bowl of warm salt water for the rinse. Gerwin tosses the tooth into a small leather pouch tied to his belt. For study, he says. You try not to think about it. The floor's grown slippery with a mixture of herb's hair and mystery sludge. You scatter fresh straw and mop what you can. The steam thickens. So does the conversation. Topics range from cathedral renovations to the price of onions to whether or not dragons sleep under mountains or churches. You contribute only when pressed. You're more listener than speaker. But you catch snippets. The blacksmith's daughter is courting the tanner's apprentice. The bailiff's goat gave birth to a two-headed kid. Historians still argue whether the Earl actually bathed last Pentecost or if it was just an unfortunate thunderstorm. One man claims he saw a comet last night. Another says it was just a firefly in a mug of ale. You nod. Anything is possible. By the time you think about sitting down, your legs have turned to boiled oats. You collapse onto a stool beside the warm coals in the drying room, trying not to fall asleep upright. Your fingers smell of thyme and sweat. You're fairly sure your elbow is damp for reasons unrelated to water. You snack on the dried apple and egg chewing, slowly savoring each bite like it's roasted duck and spiced wine. A rat skitters by. You flick a crumb toward it. You're not proud, but you are still alive. The day isn't over yet. There are still tubs to drain towels to rinse and at least 3 more types of body odor to confront. But for now, you've bought yourself 5 minutes of peace. And in the bathhouse, 5 minutes is practically a vacation. You close your eyes and take a deep breath, the scent of lavender and lye mingling into something almost bearable. Almost. You're halfway through your second gulp of lukewarm water when the latch clicks again. Back already, you mutter, standing with knees that creak like old hinges. But it's not a regular. It's Honko, the junior fire stoker from the guild hall, and he's wide-eyed with soot streaked across his brow. There's a problem with the sweating chamber, he announces, out of breath and dramatically tragic, as if he's come to inform you of the king's assassination. You don't even ask. You just grab your paddle and your worst rag and follow him back through the narrow hallway to the furnace access. The sweating room, your bathhouse's version of a sauna, is a marvel of questionable engineering. It sits atop a separate hypocaust oven designed to turn a small stone chamber into a steam-baked purification zone. Noblemen swear it cures gout. Peasants swear it cures hangovers. Gerwin swears it cures everything but taxes. It also occasionally tries to roast people alive. You step into the access tunnel. The air here is dense with heat and charcoal dust. Honko points frantically at the flue, the valve stuck halfway open, and the draft is too strong. The walls are practically sweating soot. Did you try the stick, you ask? Which stick? You narrow your eyes. The stick. You grab the char-pitted pole from the wall, wedge it into the stone lever, and grunt with effort. With a shudder and a small puff of angry smoke, the vent groans close to its proper position. The temperature stabilizes, the dripping slows. Nobody catches fire. Another crisis averted by sheer elbow grease and the correct application of "please don't explode." Back upstairs, you check the sweating chamber. Inside, 3 very pink, very damp men in linen loincloths lounging on wooden benches and debating whether beetroot can cure melancholy. "Just adjusting the draft," you say casually. "Wouldn't want you to turn into soup." They laugh. They shouldn't. You once saw a man faint in here, convinced he'd seen an angel. Turned out to be your assistant Marta with a mop. You refill their water jug, throw in a sprig of sage, and head out. The door thuds shut behind you, trapping in the heat and the sound of theological argument. Back in the main hall, the lunch lull has arrived, but don't be fooled. It's not quiet because you're done. It's quiet because something worse is brewing. Sure enough, just as you step toward the rinsing bench, the front door bursts open. It's Dotto. Dotto is the town's self-declared wellness master, a man with no formal training but an exceptional number of rings. He walks like a rooster and smells like fermented cloves. More importantly, he always brings a group. Today is no exception. Behind him trails a gaggle of hangers-on women in layered veils, men in fur-trimmed robes, a young boy holding a ferret for unclear reasons. They fan out like a noble's retinue, chattering and jostling like they're about to receive a papal blessing. "We require the sweating chamber," Dotto declares, twirling his beard. You glance toward the furnace, still wheezing from your last intervention. You do the math in your head, 3 nobles, already sweating a hot box, barely holding, and now this walking cologne bottle demanding entry. "Give us 30 minutes, you say. The air needs to harmonize." He nods solemnly as if you've spoken ancient wisdom. While they wait, they request the sacred rinse. That's not a real thing. But Dotto insists it be prepared with rainwater, fennel, and moonstone-infused nettles. You don't ask questions. You just dump mint into the bowl and swirl it counterclockwise. Presentation is half the trick. Dotto coos in approval and dabs his temples with the mixture, then encourages his followers to let the cleansing begin. Behind them, the door creaks again, and in steps someone unexpected. A knight. Well, a man dressed like a knight. Chainmail, hauberk, sword belt, and an expression that says, "I've killed at least one person for snoring." He removes his gloves, slowly scanning the room. You straighten your posture. Not from fear exactly, more from instinct. Knights are unpredictable, some are humble, others throw their boots at your head. He approaches the front desk, which is just a bench, really. "I need a tub, private, deep, and hot." You nod. "Will soap be required, just vinegar?" You blink. Right then, you guide him to the far stall, the biggest one normally reserved for married couples or extremely wealthy pigs during winter. He strips down to his linen underthings and hands you his sword. It's heavy. You try not to tip sideways. You place it respectfully on the rack near the coals. As you pour vinegar and steaming water into his tub, he lowers himself with a hiss. "Been in the saddle 4 days, he mutters, "and I think the saddle won." You smile. You're not the first. He sighs and dunks his head under emerging with a gasp. "Bless St. Cuthbert." You leave him to his vinegar soak and retreat to the hallway where Marta greets you with a bundle of fresh linens and a raised brow. "What now?" she asks. "Dotto, with followers, and a vinegar knight." She just nods. "So?" "Normal day." You sort towels while she tackles the used cloths, dumping them into the rinse barrel, scrubbing stains, then hanging them on the rooftop line to dry in the weak sun. The wind up there smells slightly less like regret. By mid-afternoon, the bathhouse is once again full to bursting. Children race between benches. Old men soak their feet and tell stories about lost duels and miraculous goats. You hand out soap with an assembly line efficiency, adjusting water levels, checking temperature with your elbow and somehow still remembering who likes their towels warm. Your hands are cracked. Your hair is damp. There's a mysterious streak on your apron that might be mustard. You pass by the knight's stall. He's asleep, snoring lightly. His sword reflects the candlelight, silent and sharp. Next to him, someone's left a small wax seal in the shape of a crow. You decide not to ask. The sun outside shifts to a low golden smear behind the rooftops. You exhale. Evening is coming, which means the flirtations, the wine sneaks, and the couples who just want to relax together. You roll your shoulders, grab a new bowl of oil, and prepare for round 3. You are not just a bathhouse attendant. You are keeper of fire, master of water, guardian of soap. And tonight the romance crowd descends. You know it's officially evening when the giggles start before the door even opens. 2 silhouettes stand just outside the threshold, whispering, then laughing harder, because one of them has clearly stepped in something unfortunate. You brace yourself and crack the door wide. A young couple slips in cheeks flushed pink from cold or drink or both. She's wearing a velvet hood that probably cost more than your annual wages. He's pretending not to be noble, but his boots are too clean for a commoner. His hand lingers on her waist just a second too long, and her hair smells like lilac oil. You resist the urge to sigh audibly. Private stall, she chirps. Of course, you say, with your most diplomatic nod. You guide them to one of the mid-sized tubs away from the windows, but close enough to hear any public scandal should one erupt. You dim the lantern in their corner just enough to suggest ambiance, then light a bit of dried sweetgrass in the brazier for scent. You pour in hot water, a generous dollop of soap infused with lemon balm, and a discreet handful of rose petals you've been saving for such occasions. Shall I return in half an hour, you ask, with the subtle tone of, please don't break anything. Oh, we'll call if we need anything, the man says, his eyebrows doing most of the communicating. They probably won't call, but they might forget which direction the door swings or use the linen cloths for something unspeakable. You add disinfect stall thoroughly to your mental to-do list. Back in the main chamber, a gaggle of apprentices from the nearby scriptorium arrives, led by a wiry lad named Eaglebert, who always manages to smell like dried ink and anxiety. They shuffle in nervously, clutching towels and trying not to make eye contact with the older patrons. You hand them each a standard kit soap, mit 1 cup of herbal rinse, and direct them to the communal basin. They move like deer in a new meadow. One slips and nearly ends up head first in a tub. You pretend not to see. As they soak, they begin to whisper about town rumors. Someone's uncle might be involved in counterfeiting. Someone else saw the bishop's clerk kissing a baker's wife near the mill race. And of course, the eternal question resurfaces. Do you think they really use crocodile dung in the noble women's face paste? You suppress a grin. Yes, they absolutely do. And the worst part, it kind of works. You move through the room with a rhythm, now refilling jugs, tossing warm towels to shivering shoulders, pulling out leaf-clogged drain covers and replacing spent candles. You've become a conductor of steam and sighs. Near the back bench, a group of 3 older women sit with towels wrapped like turbans, gossiping in hushed voices while massaging each other's calves with lavender oil. One of them waves you over. Sweetheart, she says, do you have anything for aching knees? You nod and fetch the special blend, peppermint comfrey root, and just enough wine vinegar to tingle. As you kneel to rub it into her joint, she pats your cheek. You'd make a fine monk, she says, if you stopped talking back. You grin. But then, who would argue with you? The room chuckles. Across the way, another couple arrives, older this time, married probably. She leads the way. He follows with 2 towels and a jar of thick ointment. You know their routine rinse, scrub herbal steam, then sit by the wall and hold hands in silence. You give them the same corner every week. You suspect they were once wildly in love. You also suspect they still are. There's something about twilight in the bathhouse. The light dims just enough to soften features, to make wrinkled brows look poetic, to turn calloused hands into something graceful. The steam rises like memory, curling around shoulders and hanging gently in the air. It's no wonder people get romantic in here. A lanky musician sets up near the archway with a lute and a bucket for coin. He begins plucking a slow tune, something wistful, maybe about rivers or lost pastries. The melody floats above the chatter and slosh. It's perfect. You make a quick loop past each tub. One man snores softly, mouth open. A woman is painting her toenails with elderberry juice and remarkable precision. Someone nearby is arguing that cats are divine messengers. You neither confirm nor deny. Then you notice her. She's standing by the rinsing table, looking a little lost. Tall, with a long brown cloak and carrying no towel, no satchel, no bundle of herbs. Just a small wooden box in her hands. You approach gently. Looking for a soak, you ask. She shakes her head. My father used to come here, she says. Her voice is calm, quiet. He passed 2 winters ago. Said this place gave him the best sleep he ever had. You nod, swallowing the lump in your throat. It's not uncommon, really. People come here for more than cleanliness. They come to remember, to forget, to be human for a while. Would you like to sit by the warm stones you offer? She nods, and you lead her to a bench beside the hypocaust vent. You bring her a cup of mint water and leave her in peace. Later, you'll find a single silver coin tucked into the folds of her cloak, more than a week's wages. No note, no name. By now, the flirtation crowd is thick in the air. Another couple arrives, all laughter and long glances. Someone tries to sing. Someone else hushes them. A young scribe begins writing in the steam on the tiles Mira plus Tobel before slipping and landing on his rear. You hand him a towel with a straight face and the dignity he no longer has. You pass the musician again and drop a copper into his bucket. Requests he asks. Something slow, something sleepy. He nods and shifts to a soft melody, minor chords, gentle rhythm. The room exhales. Even the knight, who has reappeared fully dressed and polishing his boots, seems relaxed. You take a moment, leaning against the wall, watching as laughter mingles with steam, as hands hold other hands, as strangers close their eyes and let themselves be warm for once. Romance isn't always grand declarations. Sometimes it's just the sharing of a quiet bath, a bowl of rinse water, a candle that never quite stays lit. You are not immune to it. You are not hardened. You are tired, yes, but still moved. You let the music wash over you, and you begin to prepare for the next wave. Because after flirtation comes the truly unpredictable force, the drunks. They start trickling in just as the musician packs up. You hear them first, uneven footsteps, echoing laughs, and a shatter of ceramic against the cobblestones outside. You sigh deeply, tuck your favorite scrubbing mitt into your belt, and mentally rehearse your polite but firm voice. It's time. The drunk bathers. The door flings open, and in stumbles a pair of men and a woman, all rosy-cheeked and glistening with sweat, though none have touched a drop of bath water yet. The men are arm in arm, singing a half-forgotten tavern song about a goat and a barmaid, while the woman waves an empty wine jug like it's a sacred relic. You try to intercept with grace. Evening, good folk. Welcome. Please mind your voices and your balance. One of the men salutes with such enthusiasm that his hat flies off and lands in the herb bin. Basil now smells like ale and regret. He doesn't notice. They pay well overpay, actually. You receive a whole silver coin, likely given in a moment of hazy generosity. You stash it quickly before they change their minds. You lead them to a smaller basin and set out the standard supplies. They settle in splashing water with abandon and loudly rating each other's feet. One claims his toes resemble saints. The others disagree. In the far stall, the knight is finally gone. You drain his vinegar bath very carefully and scrub the tub with double the usual soap. Even noble acid leaves a scent. Your hands are still wrinkled when more of them arrive. The evening drinkers have caught wind of the warmth. Some come in pairs, others alone, blinking like owls in torchlight. There's a baker's apprentice with flour still on his cheeks, a mason with wine on his breath, and an old woman who insists she's only tipsy from prayer. You offer her a mint rinse. She accepts and slurs something about St. Barbara being the true inventor of bathtubs. You nod solemnly. One man, very large, very bald, asks for the tub that sings. You don't know what that means. You guide him to the basin near the cracked window, where the wind sometimes whistles through the frame. He claps in delight. Marta enters from the rear hallway, carrying a basket of dry linens and an expression halfway between pity and I quit. You offer her the universal gesture of solidarity, 2 raised eyebrows and a slight head tilt. She smirks. Got the fire pits reset, water's holding at full heat, but the east drain's backing up again. Of course it is. You excuse yourself from the social bathers and head to the eastern corner where the stone drain has become more suggestion than function. The trickle of wastewater slows to a threatening stillness, and you grab the stick, the same one used earlier in the furnace room, and prod at the drain with practiced resignation. Something moves, not in the good way. Eventually, the blockage gives a sluggish belch of grayish water and a soap bubble that floats out like it's seen things. You replace the straw mat and shuffle back to the main room just in time to see one of the drunk men trying to wash his cloak while still wearing it. You intervene with grace. Perhaps we remove the cloak before the rinse, he laughs. Your wise soap wizard. He is absolutely going to fall asleep mid-soak. And he does. 10 minutes later, he's snoring with his chin on his chest, arms out, legs drifting like pale noodles. You drape a towel over his shoulder to preserve dignity. Not his. Yours. Across the room, the woman with the wine jug has commandeered a bowl of lavender oil and is massaging it into her elbows while singing an off-key lullaby. You recognize it as a funeral dirge. You decide not to mention that. One of the apprentices from earlier returns, eyes wide. There's a man outside trying to bring in a donkey. Of course there is. You step outside to find a slightly wobbly farmer insisting his donkey needs the healing steam. The donkey, for its part, looks unimpressed. You point to the wooden hitching post and shake your head. No hooves in the tub. He frowns, scratches his chin, and finally concedes. He leaves the donkey outside and follows you in shedding his boots with dramatic flair. You give him the nettle mitt and direct him to the rinse bench. He asks for that stinging stuff. You pour vinegar and rosemary into a bowl and let him hiss himself into purification. Back inside, the water's taken on a festive mood. A woman has started braiding flowers into another's hair. 2 friends are trying to float on their backs and failing spectacularly. One man is engaged in an animated debate with the mop, accusing it of hiding his sandals. You fish the sandals out of the herbal bucket. Apologies, you say. The mop is new, still learning its place. He bows to it solemnly. You glance toward the fire pits holding strong, thank the saints. The heat is steady. The tubs are steaming. You refill one with fresh hot water and toss in orange peel for scent. A small indulgence. The drunks won't notice, but you will. As you cross the room, a woman grabs your arm, not hard, just enough to pause you. You, she says, eyes bleary but warm. You work harder than anyone in this town. Do you know that you smile gently? You're the 5th person to say that today. Then I'm probably right. She hands you a small pouch. Inside a sugar almond, half melted, still sweet. You tuck it into your pocket beside the dried apple and the silver coin. You are building a strange, delicious little hoard today. Near the back basin, 2 men begin arguing over who gets the rinsing jug next. You step in, offer a 3rd jug with warm rosemary water, and diffuse the tension like a medieval diplomat. One sighs. You should be Pope. You shrug. Not with these knees. The room chuckles. Finally, a moment of quiet settles over the bathhouse. Not silence, never silence, but a softened version of it. Slurred songs turn to humming. Laughter fades into yawns. Even the woman with the funeral lullaby is now curled on a bench, a towel over her face, softly snoring. You move through the space slowly, a mop in one hand, a warm cloth in the other. You adjust lanterns, snuff out one candle, relight another. You refill jugs with water, just hot enough to soothe, just cool enough to comfort. It is late now, very late, but you're not done yet. The night's next guest is already knocking at the side door. The side door thuds twice, then once again, a rhythm you recognize immediately. It's not impatient, not frantic, just quiet, measured, almost polite. You ease it open. Standing there in the flickering torchlight is one of the apothecary's apprentices. Red eyes, chapped lips, a bundle in her arms wrapped in linen slightly damp and trailing the scent of camphor and crushed nettles. She doesn't speak right away, just nods once, the kind of nod that says, "It's been a long day and now it's your turn." You take the bundle from her gently. It's warm. Inside a flask of herbal extract, a folded note, illegible of course, and a half-used bar of something meant to be soap, but looks more like a petrified turnip. "She's got another," the apprentice mutters, "some kind of blistering. Elbows this time." You nod. You've seen her before? The elderly midwife who comes only after hours, wrapped in layers and silence, who sits in the rinse basin and doesn't speak unless you ask her to. Some think she's cursed, others think she's simply very, very tired. You prep her usual place, a shallow tub with a low bench just wide enough to lie back. Into it you pour hot water, a measure of the apothecary's extract, and a handful of dried willow bark. You light 2 lanterns, one higher than the other, to cast a soft, indirect glow. When she arrives, veiled as always, you help her in without a word. She moves slowly but with purpose, lowering herself into the water with a hiss and a sigh that sounds like it's been waiting all week. You hand her a cloth and a mitt. She doesn't use them, just soaks. You leave her in peace. Back in the main chamber, the drunkards have mostly passed out or wandered home. 1 or 2 linger dangling arms over the tub's edge, mumbling softly to themselves about lost keys, past loves, and strangely fermented onions. You begin the gentle phase of the job, tidying without waking. You collect empty jugs, fold used cloths into baskets, and stir tubs to keep the warmth moving. The bathhouse is quieter now, the sounds reduced to distant crackling, shifting limbs, and the occasional slosh of water against tile. It's during this lull that you notice a strange silence from the back stall. You step in slowly, holding a lantern out ahead. Empty. The noble couple from earlier gone. Not unusual. What is unusual is that they've left a small ivory comb behind, resting neatly atop a folded cloth. It's carved with tiny birds, impossibly delicate. You frown. People don't leave things like this by accident. You tuck it into the lost goods box. If no one claims it, the local magistrate will eventually auction it for grain, or more likely keep it. By now, the hypocaust fires need feeding again. You duck into the furnace chamber, now quieter, the heat a bit less urgent but still hungry. You split another few logs and stoke the coals, watching them hiss and brighten. The room glows red and orange shadows dancing behind you like tired ghosts. You hum an old tune, something your grandmother sang when scrubbing linens, something about cabbage and the moon. You're halfway through the chorus when you hear footsteps behind you. It's Marta. She's holding a bowl of stewed lentils and a heel of bread. You skipped the last 2 meals, she says, handing it over without ceremony. You take it, eyes already welling from the scent alone. It's not much, but it's warm and it's food, and it hasn't been soaked in bath water, which is really all you ask for anymore. You sit together on the stone bench just outside the furnace room. She doesn't say much, neither do you. You just eat. The bread's stale, but dipped in lentils, it's perfect. You scrape the bowl clean with your finger and lick it. Marta nods in approval. Then, as if on cue, she sighs. Do you ever think about running away? You glance at her. To where? She shrugs. Somewhere dry. You both laugh. Then silence again. Eventually, she stands brushing crumbs off her apron. "You've got one more," she says. "Someone just arrived." You blink. At this hour, she nods. Soldier. Real one. Doesn't talk much. You groan as you stand every joint protesting. Your knees sound like popcorn. You grab a new cloth and head to the front hall. There he is, sitting on the edge of the rinse bench staring into the fire. He's younger than you expected. Maybe 25, maybe younger. Face pale except for a red mark across the jaw, sword scar or falling off horse scar, hard to tell. He looks up when you approach but doesn't speak. Private tub. He nods once. You lead him to the empty basin near the rear arch, the one with the extra deep seat. You prep it quickly, no herbs, no oils, just hot water and a clean cloth. He strips down wordlessly, revealing a lean frame with more bruises than you'd like to count. As he sinks into the water, he exhales sharply through his nose. No sigh, no words. You offer a soap cake. He takes it, rubs it between his hands, and starts scrubbing. You glance down and spot the faintest tattoo on his collarbone, faded blue ink in the shape of a bird. Old army mark. Maybe from the Southern Front. Maybe one of the mercenary companies. He doesn't talk. You don't ask. He stays in the water a long time. At one point, he rests his head against the side of the tub and closes his eyes. Not sleeping, just still. When he finally rises, he nods again. Just once. You hand him a warm towel, and then he's gone. Back in the main hall, the midwife has left too. Nothing remains but a faint trace of willow bark and a single mint leaf floating like a tiny ship in the tub. You drain it gently, watching the mint spin down the spiral. The bathhouse is quiet again, for now. You check the door latch, still secure. You check the fire, still breathing. You check your own pulse, yep, still barely hanging on. And then with one last look over the room, half-lit, still steaming smelling of herbs and humanity, you allow yourself a brief moment to rest. But only a moment. Because in a place like this, silence is always just the pause before something truly bizarre. The strangest thing about the noble class you've decided is that they always arrive when you're least ready for them. You can scrub every basin, polish every bench, and lay out herbs by scent category, but they'll still show up just after someone vomits into the foot tub or a dog wanders in and relieves itself on the towel rack. This morning is no exception. You're elbow deep in yesterday's leftover rinse buckets, trying to decide whether one of them contains beet residue or a failed potion when the door opens with a theatrical creak. The scent hits first perfume thick enough to coat your tongue. Rose clove and something musky that reminds you of the back room in a spice merchant's shop. Then comes the rustle of silk and a voice sharp enough to pierce chainmail. "I expect privacy," she declares. Enter Lady Thalberg, the walking embodiment of courtly chaos. She's trailed by two handmaidens carrying pillows, a silver bowl, and a small dog that's trembling under its velvet cape. She sweeps past the room without so much as a glance at the other bathers, who to their credit stop mid-conversation to give her plenty of space. You're already moving, clearing the noble stall, fluffing linens, pouring water that's been steeped in crushed hibiscus. You toss a handful of violet petals in the basin and light the good-smelling tallow candle, the one you usually save for saints' days or catastrophic apologies. The lady perches on the edge of the tub, hand extended. Not to you, but to the handmaid, who immediately begins unlacing her outer garments with the solemnity of a surgeon. It takes a full minute to reveal that beneath all the layers, Lady Thalberg is surprisingly tiny. Sharp elbows, severe shoulders, skin like fresh milk. She steps into the water with a gasp. "Too hot," she says, before sitting down anyway. You adjust nothing. The handmaid sets the silver bowl beside you. "She wants a scalp rinse," the girl whispers. "With juniper oil. Of course she does." You mix the oil with warm water and begin the ritual, slow pour soft fingers, a linen cloth wrapped around her eyes to keep out the sting. Her head tilts back into your palm like you're her lifelong servant, which by bathhouse logic you might as well be. As you rinse her hair, she speaks, though not to you. "I dreamt last night I was a falcon," she says softly, "flying over the sea. But every time I dipped toward the water, I turned into a fish and had to start over." You pause. "Dream readers say that means unresolved burdens." She snorts. "Dream readers say whatever earns them a second loaf." Touché. She sinks deeper into the water and falls silent. You leave her to it. Outside the noble stall, the rest of the bathhouse has shifted into its late morning shuffle. The last of the merchant crowd is rinsing out, drying off, and swapping fresh gossip for borrowed combs. You return to the main room just in time to witness the return of Gregor. Gregor is not nobility. He's a wealthy nuisance, thinks money makes him charming. It does not. His tunic is embroidered with too many colors, and his belt buckle is shaped like a lion devouring a trout. "Good day, soap lord," he calls, entering with both arms raised as if expecting applause. You do not clap. He's flanked by two companions, neither of whom seem entirely sober. One carries a lute, which he plays badly. The other carries a loaf of bread and is attempting to dip it into a bowl of elderflower rinse. Gregor heads straight for the foot tub, kicks off his boots with a flourish, and asks for the deluxe scrub. You fetch the mint vinegar combo with a sigh, handing him the stiff bristle mitt reserved for men who can afford blisters. You glance over at Lady Thalberg's stall, quiet steam still curling over the edge like a dream in progress. Then something clinks. You turn. Gregor has removed 4 rings and is dropping them into your tip jar. "For your efforts," he says magnanimously. "Use them to improve this place. Or yourself." You raise an eyebrow. "We accept coins, not accessories." "Then melt them," he says, dunking his feet with a yelp. "Saints, are you boiling peasants in here?" You consider this for a moment, then smile faintly. "Yes." Across the room, the lute player starts strumming again, slowly, badly. Someone hurls a slipper at his head. It misses. The bread dipper offers it back. You return to the noble stall, where Lady Thalberg now lounges with her hair coiled like a wet crown and her tiny dog perched beside her, glaring at you. She eyes you warily. "Is this place always this lively?" You nod. Lively is the polite term. She gestures vaguely. "Tell me something odd. Something no one expects about this place." You think for a moment. "Then 3 months ago, a man tried to pickle himself in the rinse tub." She blinks. "Claimed he'd discovered a method to preserve youth," you continue. "Sat in vinegar and rosemary for 4 hours. We had to peel him out like an egg." Lady Thalberg laughs, a real sharp laugh that echoes like a cough of thunder. The dog startles. The handmaidens exchange glances. One looks faintly terrified. She stands water running in rivulets down her arms. "Wrap me," she orders. You hand her a pre-warmed towel. She takes it, presses it to her skin with a grimace, then nods once approval delivered in its most subtle form. "Perhaps I'll return," she says. "This place is theatrical." You incline your head. We try. She exits in a flurry of linen perfume and regal scorn. The dog huffs at you as it passes. Moments later, the front door thumps shut. You exhale. One noble down. Who knows how many more to go? You go to retrieve her soap bowl and notice something odd nestled in the bottom. Under the used rinse cloth is a single silver brooch. Tiny, shaped like a bee. You hold it in your palm for a second. Then tuck it into the lost items box beside the ivory comb and the gold earring from last week. Somehow this bathhouse collects secrets almost as often as it collects sweat. And today isn't even halfway through. And just like that, your brief moment of nobility-fueled prestige is over. You turn back toward the front basin and find your next clientele already removing their boots and lowering their expectations. These are your midday regulars, the hardworking, slightly grumpy middle layer of society. Not noble, not poor, just functional, and extremely particular. You welcome them with a nod and a towel. First through the door is Merrick, a merchant who smells like salt and always brings his own soap wrapped in waxed cloth like it's an heirloom. He claims it's made from lard and seaweed. You're fairly certain it's just goat tallow and wishful thinking. Basin 3, he asks, as if he doesn't already know it's where you always put him. Basin 3, you confirm. Then there's Aletha, the mid-city scribe, who insists on drying her feet with a fresh cloth each time. You've tried to reason with her. You've tried to explain the limits of towel laundering. She still stares at you like you're asking her to scrub with gravel. You hand her 3 folded towels and point her to the clean bench. And then at last your personal favorite Tovald the farmer with the worst smelling feet in the known world. Back again he grunts, removing his boots with a puff of visible stench. You try not to flinch. It's always a pleasure, Tovald. He chuckles as you gesture toward the rinse bench and toss him the heavy-duty mitt, the one you soak in salt water and lemon peel overnight. Some say it's for scrubbing. You think of it more as defensive armor. As you rinse his feet with hot water and rosemary, he insists on rosemary, says it fends off spirits you catch up on local chatter. Any news from the market chicken seller fell into her own coop, he replies. Clucked at for a full hour. You suppress a laugh. And the church, they're painting the nave again, this time with blue. Says it'll scare off the plague. Historians still argue whether color affects divine intervention. You muse mostly to yourself. He nods solemnly, unaware you're joking. The door opens again, and in come 2 travelers with cloaks stiff from dust and expressions that say, "Please don't ask where we've been." One has a bandage around his arm. The other carries a satchel that smells faintly of pickled onions. You guide them toward the foot basin, fetch a clean rinse bowl, and offer them the mild soap. Any open wounds, you ask. The bandaged one nods once. You fetch the vinegar soak. They wince but don't protest, which tells you they've seen worse than stinging water. You mop as you go, catching the drips and muddy footprints before they crust over. The warm air makes your skin sticky, your apron clingy, your thoughts foggy. You press a cold cloth to the back of your neck for a moment of clarity. Then the young couple arrives. Not nobles this time. Just shy teenagers, hand in hand, trying very hard not to look like they're here together. She wears her hair braided with dried daisies. He has the wide-eyed look of someone who hasn't bathed since the last full moon. They don't speak at first. You guide them to the rinse area, offer them 2 mitts, and pretend not to notice when they only take 1. You prepare a gentle lavender soak, nothing too floral, nothing too medical, just warm, quiet comfort. They sit close but not touching. Their feet dangle just above the water like hesitant birds. You leave them to it. Not long after the weaver with the injured thumb returns thumb still swollen, now wrapped in an even dirtier cloth. You gently pull it off, inspect the wound, and whistle low. This would look better without the dirt, you know. He shrugs. Been busy. You clean the thumb with honey water and wrap it in fresh linen. He winces but mutters a thank you. Still weaving, trying. You hand him a mitt. Don't use this hand today. Or tomorrow. Or until it stops looking like an angry plum. He nods clearly, intending to ignore you. The bathhouse hums with quiet voices and trickling water. The lute player from yesterday is gone, thank heavens, but someone has brought in a small wooden whistle. It chirps softly in the background, almost like bird song. You consider letting it play. It's oddly peaceful. Then you notice it. The smell. Not the usual assortment of damp wool and wet straw. No, this is burned straw. You glance around in mild panic. The hypocaust fires are stable. The rinse room brazier is under control. Where, the herbal shelf. A singed cloth is smoking next to the dried wormwood. You lunge across the room, snatch the cloth, and stomp it out with your boot. Gregor. Of course. He's gone now, but the aftermath of his dramatic exit, he tried to juggle oil vials and dropped one into a lantern, lingers like a rude guest. You mop the shelf, rearrange the herbs, and mutter under your breath about noble idiots with magician complexes. The room settles again. Tovald hums as he scrubs his feet. Aletha sits with her towels now attempting to dry each individual toe. The shy couple laughs softly at something only they understand. The travelers lean back, eyes closed, faces finally clean of road dust. You refill water jugs. You relight a flickering candle. You pass by the towel rack and replace the one someone used as a pillow. Again. It's calm in that strange, saturated way that only bathhouses know, where everyone is damp, relaxed, and too tired to remember their grievances. Then the door swings open again. This time it's not a person. It's a chicken. It struts in confidently as if it owns the place. You blink. Tovald chuckles. That's the coop lady's bird. It escaped. The chicken hops onto the rinse bench, pecks the soap dish, and knocks over a bowl of mint water. You grab a towel and chase it. Around the basin, over the clean linen pile, past the foot tub where one of the travelers says, "Is this part of the treatment?" Eventually you corner it by the mop bucket and scoop it up with surprising grace. It clucks once, loudly, then settles in your arms like it meant to do this all along. You return it to Tovald. "Would you?" He nods. "I'll tell her." As he exits, chicken in hand, you glance around. Wet footprints, steaming basins, soap bubbles floating like lazy thoughts. You are sticky, sore, and slightly damp from poultry combat, and yet somehow content. For now. The late afternoon sunlight spills through the small stained glass window, high in the east wall, casting fractured patterns of crimson and gold onto the floor like divine approval or spilled wine depending on your mood. You squint up at it, briefly hypnotized until a voice breaks the spell. "You forgot my rinse," you sigh and pivot. It's your favorite kind of customer, the passive-aggressive noble cousin, or at least that's what he claims to be. Thin as a flagpole and twice as wobbly, dressed in faded velvet that's seen better decades, he points dramatically at his foot basin as if it's offended his lineage. You fetch the rose water. Again. For the third time. He flops his foot back into the basin with a theatrical sigh, nearly splashing your apron in the process. "Is this place always so public?" "It's a public bathhouse," you say sweetly. Clues in the name. Behind you, someone snorts with laughter. You glance over and see two washerwomen soaking their hands and discussing someone's scandalous night out with the miller's boy. From the looks of their smirks, this isn't today's scandal, it's a rerun. This is the hour when things get complicated. It's no longer about cleanliness. Now the bathhouse becomes part market stall, part confessional, well, let's be honest, medieval Tinder. Everyone is very, very clean, very, very aware of it, and very, very interested in making sure everyone else knows they've been to the bathhouse today. A young mason enters, bare arms, soot-streaked face, hands like stone wheels. He does a slow circuit of the room before picking the rinse basin beside a red-haired weaver, and very casually rolling up his sleeves farther than is remotely necessary. You do not intervene. You do refill the lavender jug. Because this is about to get interesting. The weaver glances at him. He glances back. She pretends to wring her mitt more than she needs to. He leans closer to grab a towel. They accidentally bump elbows, and so it begins. Nearby, another couple, not quite as subtle, have claimed the corner tub. She's braided her hair with rosemary sprigs. He's trimmed his beard into a shape that suggests both seriousness and available if you're into poetry. You refill their hot water with exaggerated slowness. "More mint," she asks, batting her lashes. You add mint. A lot of mint. They giggle like children. Meanwhile, your noble cousin is now demanding extra warm towels to wrap the ankles. His ankles look fine. In fact, they look aggressively healthy. But you bring the towels anyway. You're halfway back to the drying rack when you hear it. The giggle splash. You pivot. There in Basin 6 is a young merchant woman with a smirk like she knows too much. Beside her, a town guard is trying to act casual while elbow deep in soap suds. They're both pink from heat and flirting with the kind of eye contact that should come with a warning. You pause, arms crossed. They notice. The woman laughs again. We're just scrubbing. You raise an eyebrow. Make sure you scrub the walls after then. They blush in perfect unison. You move on. At the herbal station, one of the apprentices is trying to impress a baker's daughter by identifying every plant in the basket. He gets as far as this one's thyme. That's probably basil. And this is leafy. She nods with exaggerated seriousness. You lean in. That's marjoram. The apprentice stares at you, defeated. You know all of them. You shrug. I live here. It's not even an exaggeration. You haven't had a real day off since the eel incident. In the drying corner, two elderly men are reminiscing about their youth while toweling off with impressive dignity. I once kissed a nun, one says, chest puffed. You once kissed a goose and didn't know it, the other replies. They laugh until one coughs and the other offers a mint lozenge. You hand them each a bowl of foot rinse and a pat on the back. This hour always brings out the best and worst of people. The young and hopeful come to flirt. The old come to remember. And everyone in between comes to forget for an hour or two the smell of their own homes. You pour another basin of warm rinse toss in a generous pinch of thyme and duck into the furnace room to check the fire. Still going strong. Back in the main chamber, the air is thick with steam and stories. You overhear 3 debates in a single loop of the room, whether cinnamon actually repels curses, whether the baker's new apprentice is part elf, whether fleas can be baptized. You do not weigh in. Not because you have no opinion, you definitely do, but because right now you're peeling melted beeswax off a soap tray and considering whether you can go 3 more hours without sitting down. You probably can't, but you will. You're halfway into another round of refilling jugs when you spot something odd near the drying shelf. A note, folded, just sitting there. You open it discreetly. 1 sentence, meet me near the hypocaust vent at sundown. No name, no flourish, no clue. You glance around, but the room's too full, too many people, too many bodies in motion. Could be a prank, could be a romantic overture, could be someone wants to challenge you to a duel by hot stone. You tuck it into your apron. Later. The hours continue to hum forward. One couple dries their hair together using the same cloth. Another sits shoulder to shoulder without speaking. A lone traveler sits at the edge of the room watching it all with eyes that suggest he's writing poetry in his head. You refill the rosemary, you mop the edge of the basin, you replace a towel with a suspicious footprint on it, then the incident. You didn't hear the splash, you didn't hear the yelp, but you do hear the aftermath. Oh no, not in the basin. You rush over. Someone unidentified has vomited into the rinse tub. Elitha faints dramatically. Tovald actually laughs. You, of course, are the one stuck draining the thing, gagging slightly as you toss in 3 full scoops of sage ash and a vial of Gerwin's plague-begone oil. It smells like mint and despair. When it's done, you scrub the basin, replace the claws, and light an incense stick for good measure. Flirtation hour is officially over. The magic's broken, which means it's time for the priests. You barely have time to wipe the remains of the vomit incident off your apron before the unmistakable sound of soft leather sandals and the wafting scent of beeswax candles hits your senses. The priests are here. Not all at once, thank the saints. They trickle in like water down a cracked tile quietly, slowly, but with the power to disrupt everything once they gather momentum. You straighten the towel rack, wipe your hands on the least disgusting corner of your apron, and greet them with the solemn nod they expect. The first one through the door is Father Elric, whom you've nicknamed Father Stern. He's followed by a younger deacon who looks like he's already regretting coming, and Brother Clemens round jolly and always 2 sentences away from confessing someone else's sins. They walk in single file heads, bowed slightly as if even the steam might be judging them. Their robes are freshly laundered and clearly uncomfortable. You've often wondered why holy men insist on wearing wool in July. Peace be upon this house, Father Elric says, and upon its basins. Brother Clemens adds, peering into one. You resist the urge to wink. They make their way to the far side of the room where the rinse basins are lined up beneath the image of St. Agnes you painted with a broom and some leftover pigment last winter. It's held up well despite one eye being slightly larger than the other. The townsfolk say she's always watching. The priests begin removing their sandals with reverence, which is impressive considering how much their feet smell like dried fasting bread and regret. You bring them warm rinse water with dried juniper and say nothing. Father Elric eyes the bowl like it contains judgment itself. You've added scent. Yes, Father. Juniper. For the joints. He nods, reluctantly approving. So long as it is not sensual. You deadpan, not unless your knees are very open-minded. Clemens laughs out loud and slaps your shoulder. The deacon coughs awkwardly. You pour more water and move on. That's when the pilgrims arrive. You spot them from the corner of your eye, mud-caked, half-starved, and looking like they've been dragged backward through 7 different kinds of terrain. One is limping. One is humming. One is definitely holding a goat. Pilgrims are like storms, rarely convenient and always wet. The lead one, a woman with twigs in her braid and a tattoo of St. Christopher on her neck, shuffles forward and mumbles something about penance water and an incident involving cheese. You don't ask. You point them toward the communal rinse basin and grab your backup herbal pouch, the one specifically for people who smell like relics. As you prep their soak, you hear a squawk from the towel rack. The goat has found the rosemary stash and is halfway through chewing your best bundle. You take a deep breath, rescue what's left, and redirect the goat with a dish of yesterday's foot rinse. It seems pleased. You will never understand goats. You return to find the deacon deep in conversation with one of the pilgrims. Something about visions during fasting and whether wine counts as sin if it's shared. You eavesdrop just enough to learn that someone once saw St. Jude in a puddle of soup. You hand the deacon a towel. He thanks you with the voice of someone clinging to their last bit of belief. Meanwhile, Brother Clemens is cheerfully discussing bowel regularity with the scribe from earlier. You make a note to burn that towel later. At the far end, Father Elric sits in silent contemplation, slowly washing his feet with a precision that would impress a sculptor. He hasn't blinked in 6 minutes. You quietly light some frankincense. Then there's the pilgrim with the wounded leg. It's not bleeding, but it's definitely infected. He unwraps it without warning, and half the bathhouse audibly gasps. You grab your tallow ointment and a clean linen, holding your breath as you lean in to apply the salve. Found a thorn in it, he says. Looks more like you found the entire bush, you mutter. He chuckles and winces at the same time. You finish wrapping the leg and give him a sturdy walking stick from the emergency bin. Yes, you have an emergency bin. You work in a medieval bathhouse. By now, the pilgrims are soaking, the priests are mumbling psalms under their breath, and you're pretty sure someone just confessed to a minor theft via eyebrow waggling. And then someone screams. Not a horror scream. A cold water on your sacred bit scream. You turn just in time to see that one of the other pilgrims, clearly unaware of which basin was heated and which wasn't, has dunked his entire head into the cold tub. He emerges, gasping hair plastered to his skull, and yells, "I have been reborn." Everyone claps, except Father Elric. You offer the reborn man a towel. He declines. I must air dry. Like the apostles. You back away slowly. Near the soap shelf, a pair of townsfolk are engaged in a loud debate about whether St. Bridget actually bathed an ale or just served it. You let them argue. You have no energy for saints with hygiene preferences. Marta appears beside you, her arms full of clean cloths and her nose wrinkled. Pilgrims again, she asks. You nod. Is that one wearing sandals made of bark? You nod again. Do I want to know what's in that sack? You glance toward the man with the goat, who now appears to be feeding it what might be blessed leeks. You shake your head. Nope. She sighs and heads toward the rear stalls. Back at the rinse basins, things are winding down. The priests are drying their feet in unison like some sacred synchrony. The deacon helps Clemens tie his robe. Elric stands, shakes out his sleeves, and mutters a prayer over the rinse water. You bow slightly. He doesn't return it, but his nod is fractionally less grim than usual. You'll take it. The pilgrims begin to gather their things. The tattooed woman offers you a token, a stone carved with what might be a fish or an angel with very stubby wings. You thank her, pocket it, and try not to notice that it's still warm. The goat leaves behind a pile. You clean it, quickly, silently, while whispering a prayer of your own to Saint Disinfectus, patron of unexpected messes. And then, silence. Steam curls along the tile. The air smells faintly of cloves and road dust. You take a long, slow breath. Parasites next. The first sign is always the scratching. Subtle at first, just a fingertip dragging across a scalp, a shoe casually slipped off and nudged across rough tile. You hear it before you see it. The universal, slightly guilty fidget of someone who knows something is living on them and would rather not talk about it. The parasite hour has arrived. The midday crowd has mostly cleared out, replaced by a mix of travelers, tradesfolk, and that one widow who swears by eel fat ointment and smells perpetually like pickled onions. You begin prepping your specialty kits, the vinegar rinses, sulfur soap slabs, and your absolute favorite tool, your whalebone comb. It's an old thing curved at one end and notched so finely it can trap a flea mid-hop. You once watched a noble woman lose her mind when you plucked a louse off her collar mid-sentence. She tipped you 2 groats out of pure panic. First in line is a cooper named Will, who's been itching since Candlemas and refuses to admit it's lice. You approach him gently, offering the nyack comb with the neutral tone of a man who's seen far worse. Just a quick check, nothing to worry about. He grunts. Probably just dry scalp. You nod. Could be. Could also be a tiny colony of professional squatters. He frowns. I bathed last week. Sure you did. And I'm the Queen of Navarre. You run the comb through his thinning hair, methodically dragging it from crown to neck. By the 4th stroke, you find it a wriggler. You flick it into a bowl of vinegar and offer him a look. He stares down at it, defeated. That little thing's been haunting me for days. Oh no, you say. That's just one of many. Consider it your ambassador. The next guest is a traveling merchant woman whose toenail has grown over her sandal strap. You help her soak in a warm saltwater basin while she chats amiably about Venetian silk markets and an inn that serves wine in hollowed radishes. Her ankles are covered in small bites, fleas. You keep the conversation going while you prep a mix of lemon peel, oil, and rue to rub into the skin. Been sleeping near livestock, you ask casually. Goats, she admits. They warm the bed. I'll bet they do. You hand her a cloth and demonstrate how to press the oil in, not scrub. It won't kill the fleas, but it'll make her less tasty. Nearby, 2 boys' brothers by the matching scabs and permanent expressions of mischief are dunking each other in a communal tub and yelling about boil monsters. You let them play for a bit. Laughter burns parasites almost as well as soap. Eventually, though, you step in and drag them out for inspection. One has ringworm. You hand him the sulfur soap. He recoils. Smells like rotten eggs. That's because it's working, you reply. Historians still argue whether sulfur soap was invented in the East or the West, but bathhouse attendants agree it's the best way to clear up a fungal surprise. You lather it up, applying it to his neck while he gags dramatically. You'll thank me when your face stops looking like a moldy turnip. The boy giggles. So does his brother. You let them sit near the furnace to dry. The next patient, yes, at this point you're calling them patients, is a night squire. Lean, travel worn, and very quiet. He doesn't ask for anything, just points at his calf. You lift his trouser leg and find a cluster of raised bites surrounded by raw scratch marks. You whistle. That's not from fleas. He nods. River leeches from the southern ford. You grab a tin of crushed garlic and goose fat. It's the closest thing you have to a miracle. You apply it with care and he flinches only once. You should boil your leggings before sleeping again. He shrugs. If I still have leggings by tomorrow? You give him a spare set of cloth wraps torn from old linens. They're clean if not fashionable. He bows as he leaves silently. You sit for the first time in hours on the edge of the rinse bench and stretch your legs. Your knees crack like dry branches. You rub them and glance around. A small girl approaches you, holding a jar. You brace yourself. "Is this a parasite?" she asks, showing you what looks like a pickle that's gone terribly wrong. "It's not. It's a slug." "No," you say kindly. "That's just a bad snack choice." She grins and runs off. You glance at the wall. The sun's starting to shift again. Late afternoon now. You check the herb shelf, low on rue, nearly out of vinegar. You begin refilling. It's then that Marta appears at your side, holding something behind her back like she's hiding treasure. She reveals it slowly, a bar of freshly milled rosemary and clay soap still damp from curing. "For the stubborn ones," she says. You grin. "Or the rich ones who pretend they're not filthy." She snorts. "Same thing." You place the soap carefully in the middle basin and declare it the premium rinse zone. Only one guest notices. "Is that the expensive stuff?" "It is." "Can I use it?" "You can," you reply, "but I'll expect a donation to the Don't Scratch in Public Fund." He laughs and uses it anyway. Parasite hour continues quieter now. The worst infestations have been tackled. The biting has slowed. The scratching is more psychological than medical. You mop the floors with a vinegar solution and toss a few peppermint leaves into the foot basin just to sweeten the mood. Then you find it. Under the drying bench, half buried in a towel, a small pouch, cloth, embroidered. You pick it up and shake it. It jingles. Inside 7 copper coins, a bit of crushed soap, and a dried louse pinned to a scrap of linen like a trophy. Someone took Parasite Hour very seriously. You smile and place the pouch on the lost item shelf next to the ivory comb, the silver bee brooch, and the stone with angel wings or fins. You look up to find Marta staring at it all. "We should open a museum." You nod. "Of poor choices and weird hygiene." "Exactly." She leaves to check the coals. And you toss the comb into a vinegar bowl, give the brooch one last polish, and prepare for the next round of rinse water. There's always another wave, always another itch. You're halfway through, steeping the last of the rue in a boiling pot of rinse water, when the front door creaks open with the slow, solemn rhythm that only means one thing. The penitents are here. You can feel it before you even look like the air itself takes a deep breath. No clatter, no chatter, just the soft shuffle of sandals and the unmistakable sound of someone carrying too much guilt for one lifetime. Pilgrims, penitents, and the truly grime-ridden faithful. You glance up. There's a small group of them cloaked in wool, even though the day's still warm. Mud clings to their hems, and one man is barefoot, his feet wrapped in linen soaked with road dust and shame. They carry walking staffs marked with scallop shells and wax seals from abbeys you've only heard of in whispered stories. One of them a young woman with close-cropped hair and eyes like bruised slate steps forward. "We've come from St. Aldred's Shrine," she says. 3 days' walk. 2 nights in the woods. No stops, but prayer. You nod slowly. "Let's start with your feet, then." She smiles faintly. You prepare the foot basin with hot water, dried thyme, and a generous ladle of marigold oil. It's meant for inflammation, but also for morale. These are not ordinary clients. They expect no comfort, but if you give them some anyway, they'll remember. As they begin to soak, the bathhouse falls into a respectful hush. Even the gossip-prone washerwomen from earlier bow their heads and move toward quieter corners. You light 2 sticks of juniper incense and pass out towels. Not the good ones, but clean ones folded with care. One man removes his robe to reveal a tunic with holes and stains shaped like old bruises. Another clutches a pouch of holy relics, at least that's what he says it is. You glance inside later and find a small rock, a broken tooth, and a feather. Divine or not, it's his truth. You begin the ritual of the pilgrim soak. It's slow, methodical, almost sacred. First the rinse, then the lye soap, just enough to sting, not enough to scald. Then the final splash of herb water. Some speak, some don't. One confesses a sin quietly while you clean her hands. Another prays aloud while you rinse his ankles. A third simply weeps. You do not interrupt. You do not advise. You scrub. One woman pulls out a sackcloth shirt and asks if you can help scrub it. You lead her to the wash basin and demonstrate. She watches you as if you're a prophet. You hand her a brush. She begins carefully. At one point, the young woman who first spoke pulls you aside. "We've one more," she says. "He fell on the trail, rolled in something." You raise an eyebrow, something she repeats, holy ground or cow dung. Maybe both. You brace yourself. Moments later, two of the larger pilgrims drag in a third man, older robed and thoroughly coated in what appears to be a blend of mud-dried grass and what can only be described as rural mystery. You direct them to the back rinse basin. "Strip him," you say. Carefully? They do. His robe peels off like a moldy orange. Beneath, he's wearing underthings that might once have been white, but are now somewhere between beige and existential despair. You grab your strongest soap, a brick made of ash goat fat and sheer willpower, and go to work. It takes 3 buckets just to get the top layer off. When you finish, the man sighs so loudly it echoes. You drape a towel around him and send him to dry beside the furnace. You'll burn the underthings later. No one needs to remember those. By now, the other pilgrims have spread throughout the room. Some rest on benches. Others meditate beside the hot tubs, heads bowed in quiet reflection. One writes something on the wall in charcoal, clean flesh, clear heart. You let it stay. The younger girl, Allah, you've learned, approaches again, this time holding a pouch. From the abbess, she says, handing it to you. Inside is a single silver ring engraved with a cross and a vine. "For your care." You hesitate. She nods. "Take it." She says the Lord helps those who heat the water. Fair enough. You set it gently into the lost item box, not out of forgetfulness, but because it's already part of your collection of sacred odds and ends. One day you're going to build a shrine of your own. You just haven't decided whether it'll honor saints or soap. Just as you're finishing with the pilgrims, the door creaks open again, this time without ceremony. A priest enters, not like the others earlier, but leaner, older, with robes that whisper as he walks. You recognize him immediately. Father Mathuin. He only comes once a month, always at this hour, always silent. He carries a small pouch, inside a single vial of myrrh and a folded prayer written in Latin. You take the vial, mix it into a copper bowl of hot water, and place it beside his chosen tub. He doesn't speak. He never has. But he looks at you with tired eyes and nods once, a thank you perhaps, or a warning. You never know. He steps into the water fully clothed, robes and all. You've stopped questioning this. It's part of the ritual, a symbolic cleansing, cloth and flesh together. He remains submerged for 10 full minutes. You time it. Then he stands dripping and still solemn and leaves without drying. A trail of holy water follows him out the door. And just like that, he's gone. You sigh, stretch, and mop the puddles. The bathhouse is warm again, not just from heat, but from silence, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your shoulders like a heavy blanket. The pilgrims gather their things, bow to you as they leave, and trail out into the cooling twilight one by one. Allah is the last to go. "Thank you," she says simply. You nod. "Come back when your sins catch up again." She smirks. "Probably tomorrow." The door closes, and for the first time today, the bathhouse is empty. Only for a breath, because you hear footsteps approaching again. And these ones, they're running. You barely have time to set down your rinsing bowl when the front door slams open with a bang that rattles the herb rack. A blur of silk, sobbing, and high-pitched yelping floods into the room. My son. My son is scalded, cue the drama. You don't even flinch. Years in this place have dulled your fight or flight response into something more like fight and then clean it up later. You glance up just in time to see a noble woman with a feathered coif and an expression of total outrage storm into the bathhouse like she's preparing to accuse someone of murder. Behind her, a small boy, maybe 6, maybe just very short hobbles dramatically on one foot, holding the other up as if it's been dipped in lava. It hasn't. You can already tell from the lack of actual blisters. But that doesn't mean today's going to be easy. I demand recompense, she shrieks. He was boiled where you ask. In the basin, the water was scalding. You peer at the boy's foot. Pink, yes, but not blistered. Certainly not the kind of thing that qualifies as boiled. He wobbles, sniffling. Did he test the water first? He is a child, she roars. He does not test things, he simply is. A real quote for the ages. You motion toward the herb table and fetch the comfrey balm. It's good for swelling bruises and conveniently parental fury. You squat down to the boy's level. What's your name, Alaric, he mumbles. Alaric, you say, gently does. It feel like a burn or like you stubbed it on a rock while being slightly dramatic, he thinks. Then shrugs. You nod. Honest. I like it. You smear a thin layer of balm on his foot and wrap it in clean linen. He doesn't even wince. In fact, he looks kind of pleased with the attention. His mother, meanwhile, is still pacing. I shall write a letter, she declares. To the magistrate, or the bishop. Both. You hand her a damp towel. Here, for waving dramatically. She freezes, and then something magical happens. She laughs. Just once, but it's real. High-pitched yes, but not deadly. You seize the opportunity. Would you like to soak Lady Ermintrude? You resist a grin. Lady Ermintrude. We have a basin prepared with rose petals and fennel, perfect for cooling nerves and recentering after near tragedy. She eyes you, then the boy, then the towel. Fine, but I want warm, not hot, of course, and no peasants near me. We've roped off the drama basin just for you. You guide her to a private stall where you fluff a folded linen like you're opening a luxury tent. She sinks into the basin with the grace of someone who has practiced being difficult since birth. Alaric, meanwhile, has found a reed flute and is now wandering around playing something that sounds like a goose arguing with itself. You give him a chunk of honeycomb to keep him quiet. Disaster averted, mostly. Except for the crowd, because while Lady Ermintrude's arrival was loud, it was also noticed. And now there's a slow trickle of people peeking in to see the aftermath of the noble scalding. You hear whispers. Did the boy lose a toe? They say he screamed for 3 hours. He lit on fire. No, he didn't. He's currently trying to stick the reed flute up his nose. You mop the walkway and refresh the vinegar basins. Then you check the culprit, the scalding tub. It's warm. Not even hot. You check the thermometer stick Marta carved last month. It reads just right between brisk and blister. You sigh. Still, it's a good time to check all the heating lines. You head back into the hypocaust chamber, that low glowing room of brick-lined heat soot and regret. The fire's still strong, but one of the air channels is hissing oddly. You prod it with a stick, and a puff of steam escapes like an angry cat. Right. Minor repair needed. You stuff the joint with damp wool and pray it holds. You make a mental note, fix with clay tomorrow. Or convince an apprentice it's a noble task. Either works. When you return, Ermintrude is halfway through a sermon about overcooked porridge and the collapse of manners. Marta is nodding politely while brushing petals into a jar. Alaric is now asleep on the floor. You throw a cloth over him like a makeshift blanket. Lady Ermintrude rises with theatrical precision, drying herself with the towel you accidentally scented with calming lavender oil. She doesn't notice. She leaves you with a sniff and a silver half-penny. Not for the burn, she says, for the service. You kept your mouth closed longer than I expected. You bow. High praise. She gathers the sleeping Alaric, drapes him over one shoulder like a sack of flour, and sweeps out with the dignity of someone who's forgotten they brought a goat here once. You toss the flute into the rinse barrel and let it sink. Then, just as you begin to relax, someone knocks on the side entrance. A soft, polite knock. You open it to find a man holding a document, a real scroll, sealed. He clears his throat. The magistrate requests to know if a noble child was harmed here today. You blink. Define harmed. He sighs. Emotionally, you nod. Then yes. He passes you the scroll. You don't open it. Instead, you hand him a jar of comfrey and a baked turnip for your trouble. He nods, accepts both like this is normal, and walks away. You slide the scroll into the laundry pile. You'll read it later, maybe. You finally sit. You've earned it. Your apron is damp, your left shoe squelches, and your nose still smells like rosemary panic. But the bathhouse is quiet, and for now, no one is screaming. At least, not loudly. The quiet never lasts. Just as you're beginning to believe you might sneak 5 whole minutes without anyone screaming, spilling, confessing, or bleeding, the bathhouse door creaks open again slowly this time. No drama, no scalded children, just the soft shuffle of boots and the unmistakable sound of awkward hesitation. You glance up and your heart does a tiny hiccup. A soldier. Not just any soldier, a knight. Well, probably a knight. It's hard to tell beneath the layers of road grime bruises and dented chainmail that make him look more like a poorly stewed casserole than a noble warrior. He pauses at the threshold, squinting into the steamy haze as if trying to remember whether he's hallucinating or not. You step forward. Need a soak or just directions to the afterlife. He cracks a smile. It's lopsided and slightly pained. If you've got a clean tub and something for this, he gestures vaguely to his shoulder, then I'd choose you over heaven. High praise. You nod him toward the far stall, the one with the deep basin and reinforced bench, the tub you keep for serious cases. You call it the Smithy Special, though not to their faces. He groans as he sets his sword aside. You make a mental note to clean it later. It's crusted with something that looks like sausage grease and trauma. As he starts to undress, you see the damage bruises the color of thunderclouds, a gash across his ribs half-healed with dried blood and prayer, and legs that move like they're made of old timber. His linen shirt clings to him like it's afraid to be left alone. Name you ask, prepping hot water and time compresses. Lucan, he says. You nod. Been in battle, he snorts. More like a bar brawl that got out of hand. Where, he grins. About a mile west of here, dented 4 heads, 2 of them mine. You gesture for him to sit. He lowers himself slowly like a man unraveling. You begin your assessment, bruises not infected, scrape surface level. 1 cracked knuckle, 1 swollen knee, and a spectacular black eye. But the real issue is the gash on his side. The edges are clean but red, and the smell tells you it hasn't been washed properly. You clean it in silence, dabbing gently with salt water and rose oil. He doesn't flinch. You do this often, he asks, only when the bar fight loses. He chuckles, but it turns into a cough. You hand him a cloth to spit into. He wipes his mouth, then studies you. Not what I expected. What did you expect? Less sarcasm, more humility. You raise an eyebrow. This place runs on steam soap and low expectations. Another chuckle. A real one this time. He leans back as you rinse the wound and his eyes close for a moment, not from pain but relief. You wrap his side with clean cloth and hand him a bar of nettle soap. Wash everything but the stitches, and try not to dunk your head in anything shared. He salutes with the soap. Aye, healer. You leave him to it. But soldiers like lice rarely come alone. 2 more men enter, not knights, but definitely attached. One has a splinted arm, the other has half an eyebrow and a nose packed with wool. You sigh. Lucan. Don't blame me, he calls. They insisted. You point them toward the smaller tubs already prepping the camphor oil and ginger paste for bruises. As they strip down, one of them starts humming a marching song. The other grumbles about the smell of mint triggering his nightmares. Within minutes, the whole rear half of the bathhouse is a miniature barracks. Soldiers joking, soaking, arguing about who fell off the cart first. You can't tell if they're loyal to the same lord or just united by trauma and bad hygiene. Marta appears with clean towels, surveys the scene, and mutters, "It's always men with swords, never men with manners." You nod. At least they tip. They don't, but the myth helps morale. You pass through the bathhouse like a silent medic tending wounds and extinguishing minor fires, literal and metaphorical. One soldier claims he was cursed by a hedge witch. Another swears his bruise is shaped like a chicken. You do not verify either claim. But as you work, something shifts in the room. A quiet begins to settle. Not the holy quiet of pilgrims, not the flirty murmur of courting peasants. This is the silence of men who've survived something and are just letting go. One dunks his head and sighs. Another leans back, eyes closed, arms limp. Even Lucan, still braced against the wall, is breathing slower. You light a clove candle and dim the lantern. Steam thickens. Time bends. Someone whispers a prayer. Another sings a lullaby in a language you don't know. It's not peaceful, but it's something. And then the musician arrives. She walks in barefoot with a lute slung over her back and the kind of calm that makes you instantly suspicious. You know her type: traveler, bard, occasional pickpocket, full-time eavesdropper. She grins at you. "I don't bathe," I observe. "Then stay dry," you say. "We're out of poetry soap." She laughs and settles on a bench, tuning her lute lazily. No one tells her to stop. She plays something soft, just background strings, and the bathhouse absorbs it like a sponge. Lucan opens one eye. Play the one about the fool and the princess. She nods and starts strumming. And for one blessed moment, everything melts. Bruises fade. Steam curls. Fingers tap along to the beat. No one remembers the fight, the wound, the scalding child, or the goat that ate your rosemary. The bathhouse becomes something else entirely. A refuge. A small, sacred, dripping miracle. Lucan leans back, watching you as you collect another bowl of rinse. Do you ever get tired of all this? You pause. Always, you say, but not enough to stop. He nods. Then don't. And just like that, the soldier becomes another soul in the bathhouse's endless rhythm. By now, the sky outside has deepened into that twilight blue that feels more like a pause than a color. The bathhouse windows, tiny and fogged with breath and steam, glow like lanterns from the inside out. You know what time it is by the smell alone, the faint tang of lemon balm and smoke, the lingering trail of damp linen, the unmistakable scent of soot meeting lavender oil night prep. And of course the smell of bread. You glance up just as two figures push through the door, the miller's daughter and her new apprentice carrying a cloth-wrapped bundle like it's an offering to the gods. Which in here it kind of is. "Still hot," she says, handing you the bundle with a wink. You unwrap it slowly. 6 small loaves, crusty and steaming, already slick with melted butter. You look at her, almost reverent. You'll be canonized for this. "No thanks," she says. "I hear saints don't get lunch breaks." You laugh, pass her a towel, and guide her to an open tub. She sinks in with a groan of relief, and the apprentice follows, blushing furiously when he realizes she plans to actually bathe. They whisper, giggle, splash once. You pretend not to notice and chew a corner of bread behind the herb rack like a guilty raccoon. But your break is short-lived, because that's when the herbalist arrives. She glides in like she owns the place, and honestly, she sort of does, at least spiritually. Her name is Isolde, but the townsfolk just call her that herb woman who talks to squirrels. She carries 4 pouches, a jar of dried rose hips, and a look of perpetual mild exasperation, as if the entire village is one bad sneeze away from poison. "You're low on penny royal," she says, eyes scanning the shelves. "Yes." and you've been using lavender with the comfrey again. You blink. How could you possibly? You've been scenting the vomit basin. Don't ever mix calming and drawing herbs. You'll confuse the body. You mutter something about confusion being the natural state of medieval hygiene, but she's already unpacking. You hand her a bowl and let her sort through her wares, knowing full well she's about to reorganize the entire shelf for health reasons. As she does, she pauses, lifts a pouch to her nose and sniffs, then frowns. This one's off. She dumps the contents into the brazier. Smoke rises, blue, then green, then something that smells like burnt licorice and shame. Everyone in the room groans. Sorry, she says, without sounding remotely sorry. You wave the air clear with a towel and hand her the lemon balm jar. Please, for the love of soap. She grumbles but obeys. Meanwhile, the musician from earlier is still here now, reclining with her feet in the rinse basin, plucking at her lute like it's a sleeping cat. She's watching everyone with the sleepy grin of someone planning a ballad and deciding who gets a flattering verse. Isolde, oblivious, begins inspecting people's hair. You have build-up, she tells the baker's apprentice. He wilts. What kind of build-up, spiritual and actual? He looks devastated. You step in with a rinse jug and a quick save. Let's wash that away, shall we? He nods, relieved. Then a surprise, one of the village reeves enters. You rarely see them here. Too proud, too clean by proclamation. But this one, Hal, removes his cloak and hat and looks utterly blessedly exhausted. His hands are stained with ink and guilt. Rough day, you ask? I had to measure the churchyard. Then deal with 3 land disputes. And someone keeps stealing my seal. You fetch the citrus soap. He raises an eyebrow. Special treatment. This one's for liars. He nods amused and steps into the rinse. Isolde inspects his nails. He doesn't resist. A moment later, the candle maker arrives, her hands blistered and streaked with wax. You lead her to the side basin, drop in a cube of honey salt soap, and guide her fingers gently into the water. She winces at first, then sighs. I dropped a mold. On my foot. Then stepped on it again. You've achieved the rare self-inflicted double injury. Impressive. She grins through the pain. Should have stayed home. You smile. Where's the fun in that? Around the room, the light dims further. You trim the candle wicks and add a few drops of frankincense to the brazier. The scent is warm and sleepy, like the end of a good tale. Marta reappears and begins folding the night linens. Isolde is still muttering to herself in a mix of Latin and squirrel language. Hal is drying his hands, now talking politics with the bread-soaked girl in the main tub. The candle maker leans back, bandaged fingers laced over her chest like she's already half dreaming. You mop around the edges, refill 2 jars, reorganize your rinse brushes, and then you notice it. Someone has left a note. Folded. Small. Balanced delicately on the lost item shelf, right between the silver bee brooch and the Lausen linen pouch. You open it. It reads, Tonight, after lockup, come alone. There's no signature, but there's a pressed sprig of lemon balm pinned to the bottom corner. You raise an eyebrow. Is it a threat? A flirtation? A strange herbalist joke? You tuck it into your apron and move on. As usual, because you still have 20 more towels to launder, and someone just tripped over a footstool trying to impress the lute player. She doesn't notice, but you do. And you'll write it down in the Bathhouse ledger later under Daily Incidents Romantic Humiliations. 1. You exhale, stretch your arms until your shoulders pop and glance toward the door. Outside, the first stars are beginning to show. And inside, the water is warm, the guests are dozing, and for now, the bathhouse is safe. The last candle of the evening flickers low, casting soft shadows that sway across the tiled floor like slow dancers at the end of a feast. Most of the basins now lie still, their surfaces glistening under thin wisps of steam. The few remaining guests have begun that quiet retreat into towels, into their own thoughts, or into the back corner where the musician is softly strumming a lullaby that may or may not be about turnips. You stretch your back until it pops. Somewhere between your spine and the soles of your feet is a numb ache that reminds you you've been on them for at least 14 hours. Marta, carrying a load of used linens that could bury a mule, stops beside you. "Still think we don't need an extra pair of hands," she mutters. "I think we need an army," you reply. But there's no one to send. Just you, Marta, and the ghost of whoever last mopped the corners. That's when the door creaks open once more. At first you think it's another straggler, but the person who enters doesn't move like a tired traveler or a gossiping villager. He moves like smoke, graceful, silent, and entirely out of place. You clock 3 things instantly. His cloak is dry. 2, his boots are very clean. 3, his eyes scan the bathhouse like he's cataloging everyone's sins. He pauses near the basin where Hal the Reeve is still toweling off, then makes a slow loop toward the herb shelf. Not touching anything, just looking. You intercept him near the rinse bench. "Can I help you?" He smiles thinly. "Perhaps. I'm looking for someone. Plenty of people here. This one's particular. Travels lightly, works late, doesn't mind heat." You meet his gaze. You're either describing me or a salamander. His smile doesn't move. "I was told to meet them after lockup." Your fingers brush the note in your apron pocket. Pressed lemon balm. You sigh. "Wait there," you say, gesturing toward the drying shelf. "No one will bother you. Unless you make noise, in which case Isolde will throw a marjoram pouch at your head." He nods, amused. You busy yourself refilling oil lamps, watching, listening. Nearby, the lute player begins quietly singing again, something about a fisherman who loved a lake more than his wife. You're not sure it ends well, but the melody is soft enough that it eases the tension in your shoulders. Then you notice another arrival. Not through the door, through the side wall vent. A hand, small smudged, reaches through the vent grill, followed by a whisper, "Is it safe?" You walk over and squat beside the vent, peer through. It's Brick Gregor's cousin, occasional thief, full-time sneak. His face is smeared with charcoal and triumph. "I have the thing," he whispers. "What thing?" "The wax seal. From the Reeve." Your brain stalls. You stole the Reeve seal, borrowed, temporarily. For what purpose? To fix a marriage. You stare. He continues. "His sister and the candlemaker's brother have been writing letters. I just accelerated it. You forged a betrothal." He grins. "It'll hold up if the wax sticks." You close your eyes, inhale slowly, put it back before anyone notices. Too late. Of course it is. Back inside, Hal is standing by the window, frowning at a blank scroll where a seal should be. You turn back to the vent, return the seal. Brick's hand waves a little. "Fine, but only because I like you." You mutter a prayer and return to the main room where Marta is now glaring at the stranger near the drying bench. "Is that the herb inspector?" she asks. "I don't think so." "Good. He's too clean." You move past her, collecting used soaps, wiping down the basin rims and humming quietly. It's the hour when everything softens. Guests are whispering. The lute's grown hushed. Even the steam seems to rise more slowly, drifting like thoughts too tired to finish themselves. You gather the final pile of used towels and head into the back chamber to start soaking them. That's when you hear it. Not a scream, not a song. Glass breaking. You rush out. Someone's knocked over the oil vial shelf. Broken glass glitters across the floor like cursed candy. At the center of it is the apprentice, the baker's lad from earlier, frozen, horrified hands, raised like he's about to be exiled from the kingdom. "I tripped," he stammers. Over a goat." You blink. "There's no goat in here." He points, and sure enough, a goat, standing on the herbal shelf, chewing on a scroll. Not again. You lunge, slipping slightly on rose oil, and manage to grab it by the horns just before it topples the entire clove jar collection. Brick, you yell. From the vent, yes, your goat followed you. A pause. Oh, that's Buttercup. She's harmless. You drag the goat toward the exit. She resists with the stubbornness of wet bread. Finally, you throw a towel over her head, which weirdly works. Buttercup exits, bleeding softly into the twilight. The bathhouse breathes again. You mop up the oil, sweep the glass, and give the apprentice a look. He bows 17 times and vanishes. Isolde reemerges, takes one look at the aftermath, and mutters, "Typical." You hand her a cloth and keep scrubbing. Eventually the last guest leaves. The lute player packs her instrument. Marta shuts the drying racks. Isolde finally disappears with her squirrel jars. And you lock the doors. Finally. Outside, the moon is rising. The air smells of damp earth and lavender. And you remember the note. You reach into your apron fingers, brushing the lemon balm sprig. You glance toward the side courtyard. The stranger is waiting there, still as stone. You walk toward him, towel in hand, and raise one eyebrow. Alone, he says, as requested. What is this? A proposal, a heist, a ritual bath. He smiles. Let's just say, you've been noticed. And not just by soap makers. You cross your arms. Who sent you? No one you've heard of. Try me. He reaches into his cloak and produces a coin. Not silver, not copper, not gold. Soapstone, stamped with the symbol of a basin and a flame. You frown. You've seen that symbol once in an old ledger. A secret guild, a forgotten order. He nods. There are others, he says. Places like this. Keepers like you. We're watching. You take the coin, turn it over, and look back up, but he's already gone. Just steam where he stood. You stand there for a long moment, holding the soapstone coin in your hand, still warm from the stranger's pocket, or possibly from something stranger than that. It's smooth, polished, unnervingly light. You flip it between your fingers and trace the basin and flame emblem with your thumb. A secret guild of Bathhouse Attendants. No, can't be. And yet, you slip the coin into the hidden pocket sewn into your apron. Yes, the one meant for emergency mint sprigs and notes from flirty scribes, and turn back toward the quiet heart of your world, the bathhouse at night. There's something holy about it, sacred in a way that even the priests earlier didn't quite manage to conjure. The steam has settled into corners, curling like contented cats. The stone floor glistens with the memory of water. Every basin is empty now, but still warm like a teacup that hasn't quite forgotten the last sip. You pad softly around the room barefoot, now your steps leaving faint impressions that vanish behind you. Your feet ache in 12 different places. Your fingers are wrinkled like soaked parchment. Your back is screaming at you in a language you don't understand, and still you don't stop. Because the end of the night isn't about stopping. It's about setting up tomorrow. You check the herb drawers, tucking them closed one by one. You sweep again, even though you already swept. You fold 6 more towels, just because. From the rear chamber, a noise, soft, metallic. You creep back, towel in one hand, candle in the other, push open the wooden door that leads to the supply nook, and freeze. Lucan, the battered knight from earlier, is standing there, fully dressed now, or at least as close to fully as someone in bruised chainmail can get. He's holding one of your rinse jugs and pouring out just a trickle into the fire pit. "What are you doing?" He looks up. "Old custom," he says quietly. "Pour a bit of clean water before sleeping." Thanks the earth. You watch him, arms crossed. You could have asked. He shrugs. "Didn't want to wake anyone. You think this place ever sleeps?" He chuckles. "Fair." You watch as the last drops sizzle on the coals. Then without looking up, he says, "That man who came earlier." Your posture tightens. "What about him?" He asked about you. Before he came in. Outside. Of course he did. He dangerous. Lucan turns, finally facing you fully. No. Worse. You raise an eyebrow. He's careful. The knight hands you the empty jug. Careful people are always up to something. You nod, absorbing that, and set the jug down. Then you hold up the soapstone coin. This mean anything to you, he studies it. Not officially, but I've seen one before. Where south, Abbey Town, place with bath basins lined in black stone. The attendant there wore a pin just like that coin. You squint. Was he like me? Lucan chuckles. He was 6'5" and kept 3 ravens. You sigh. Close enough. He turns to go but pauses. Just watch your back. Bathhouses are full of secrets. You nod. So are basins. He grins and disappears into the night. You return to the main chamber, that strange coin burning a gentle weight against your hip. You light one last lamp and begin the midnight ritual, your ritual. You remove the rinse stones from their bowls, set them in a basket of salt to recharge. You uncap the jars of rosemary and lavender, letting their oils breathe into the air. You wipe the door handles with vinegar and thyme, not because it's needed, but because it feels right. And then the basin, the large one, the deep one, the one reserved for no one in particular, but always left prepared just in case. You slide into the water with a hiss. It's hotter than you intended, but your muscles cry with relief. You sink until only your eyes break the surface, staring at the flickering reflection of the lamp overhead. There's no one here to impress, no apprentice watching, no client pretending they didn't hear you sigh, just you. You close your eyes. Your mind wanders through the events of the day, a noble tantrum, a bar brawling night, a goat with romantic ambitions, a guild, a watcher, a coin that smells faintly of cedar. You don't dream, but you do rest. 15 minutes maybe, just enough. When you rise again, the water is cooler and your skin smells like basil and perseverance. You dry yourself with the last towel, hang it neatly, and wrap a fresh one around your shoulders like a shroud of the truly exhausted. And then you see it. Another note. This time not folded, just written directly on the wall, in chalk, near the drain pipe. Faint, almost missed. It reads, "The basin remembers." Underneath a tiny symbol just like the one on the coin. You walk over, run your fingers over the chalk. It's fresh, still dusty. Someone was here while you bathed. You didn't hear them, didn't feel them. That's what unsettles you. You look around. Everything's still in place. The oils, the soaps. Even Buttercup the goat is back in the alley snoring under a cart. But that chalk mark lingers. You scrub it off. Slowly, carefully. Then return to the front desk and write it down in the ledger. Not under strange events, which is already full. No, you create a new section, signs. Underneath it, the basin remembers. You close the ledger, snuff the candles, and lock the door. Tonight the bathhouse sleeps, but you keep one eye open just in case. Dawn comes not with birdsong, but with the slow hiss of steam creeping back into your lungs. You wake on the bench in the side chamber, fully clothed head tucked under your arm like a cat that gave up mid-groom. The towel you'd wrapped around your shoulders has half slid to the floor, and your ankle is dangling in a bucket of now cold rinse water. At some point in the night, someone, likely Marta, tossed a folded apron over you like a blanket. You sit up slowly. The silence is suspicious. You wait for the usual morning sounds, footsteps, splashing Marta, yelling about someone stealing the basil again. Nothing. Too quiet. You push open the door to the main bathhouse floor. It's immaculate. Every basin rinsed, the herbs restocked, the floor swept. Even the soot has been scrubbed from the edge of the hypocaust chimney. The place is gleaming like it's waiting for royalty or possibly divine inspection. Marta. No reply. You check the back basin, the herb shelf, even the laundry line out the side window. No Marta, and no Buttercup. You begin your search. Outside the street is hushed, but there's motion. People moving quickly, heads down, avoiding eye contact. A few nod to you. One whispers, "Have you heard?" "Heard what?" They just shake their head and disappear down a side alley. You follow the scent of fresh bread toward the bakery and find the apprentice instead covered in flour and grief. "She's gone," he says, dusting his hands on his tunic. "Who her?" "The miller's daughter, Marta's friend. She left before sunrise, took only a satchel." You stare at him. "And Marta?" He swallows. "Left with her." You blink. "Marta, left voluntarily." You march back to the bathhouse in silence, the soapstone coin now feeling heavier in your pocket. On instinct, you check the lost item shelf. Everything's still there. Silver, the louse pouch, a comb, missing 2 teeth. But something's been added. A folded parchment. No seal. No signature. You open it. It reads, "Time to follow the heat. If the basin remembers, then so do we." You sit on the edge of the rinse bench and read it again. Your second in command, your partner in crime, the one person who knew where every towel was stored, gone. You glance up at the corner ledge where she always hung the good ladles. All of them are missing. She took the ladles. This is serious. But there's no time for dramatics, because suddenly the front door creaks open again and in walks the monk you haven't seen in months, Brother Anselm. Tall, hooded, slightly too thin, and always smelling faintly of candle smoke and regret. He's holding something wrapped in cloth. "I brought you a gift," he says. "Does it come with an explanation for why Marta's vanished?" He pauses. Not directly, but this may help. He unwraps the cloth and reveals an object you haven't seen in years. A water stone. Black. Smooth. Heavy. Marked with the same basin and flame symbol as the coin. Your stomach turns. These were used in the old bathhouses, Anselm says. Places like this, but older. Secret ones. They didn't just cleanse the body, they kept knowledge. You narrow your eyes. You're talking like bathhouses were libraries. In a way they were. He hands you the stone. It's cool to the touch, despite being wrapped in cloth and carried in the sun. This one came from the old bath under St. Wilfrid's Abbey, sealed off a generation ago. You look at it closely, and they're carved faintly into the side M.R. Marta's initials. You turn the stone over and notice something else, 5 dots forming a pattern, like a constellation. No, a map. You breathe out slowly. She found something. Anselm nods, and she left to follow it. You feel every muscle in your back tighten like someone just poured cold rinse down your spine. You stand. "What do I do with this?" you ask. "Keep it warm," he says. Waterstones crack in cold basins, but if you place it in consistent low heat, it shows you where to go. You glance at the hypocaust grate. You know just the spot. You thank him and tuck the stone under your apron. He bows once, then turns to go, but pauses in the doorway. "Oh," he says, "one more thing." You raise an eyebrow. He smiles faintly. "If anyone offers you basil and asks if your basin sings, run." Then he's gone. You turn back to your bathhouse, your domain, your now Marta-less stronghold, and begin preparing the heat tray. A shallow metal pan lined with sand and a few dry bricks tucked just above the furnace. You nestle the stone into the tray and stoke the fire beneath it with your gentlest kindling. And you wait. Hours pass. The bathhouse runs as usual. You serve a baker with scalded fingers, rinse a child who fell into a goose pond, and deal with 3 elderly men arguing whether St. Wulfstan ever actually bathed, all while glancing toward the stone. By late afternoon, it begins to shift. Not dramatically. Just a shimmer, barely visible, but you feel it. The heat catches some trace inside the stone, and for a heartbeat, the 5 dots begin to glow faint gold like lanterns on a misty hill. A path. You don't know where it leads yet, but Marta does, and she's already walking it. You add one more line to the ledger under signs. The stone glows in heat. Marta's on the move. I may have to follow. Then quietly you unlock the basin cabinet, pull out the traveling soap satchel, and begin preparing for a journey. Because the bathhouse may be sacred, but some stories are too hot to stay home. The decision doesn't happen all at once. It drips in like the slow seep of rinse water through a leaky tile, annoying at first, then impossible to ignore. One moment you're standing in your freshly mopped bathhouse trying to convince yourself that the glowing soapstone is just an overcooked rock. The next, you're rummaging through the backroom inventory looking for your travel pouch and that ridiculous wool hat Marta once knit you as a joke. You find it. Still smells like bay leaves and sarcasm. You stuff it into your satchel. Every item feels like it might be the last you touch here. The long-handled ladle you once used to fish a pigeon out of the rinse barrel. The bowl with the hairline crack that you insisted gave the water character. The vinegar jug with a chipped lip that always poured a bit too freely. You run your hands over them slowly like farewells. You don't lock up yet. That part still feels too final. Instead, you prep the evening herbs habit reflex. Marigold mint a sprig of rue. You blend a rinse that no one will use tonight. You wipe down a basin that no one has dirtied. And as you do, you catch yourself humming the bathhouse rhythm song. Mop, scrape, slap the stone, soap the crack, and scrub the bone. A lullaby for the unsanitary. You hear the front door creak. A familiar voice cuts through, leaving already. You glance up. It's Lucan again, less dented, less grumpy, but still somehow bruised in spirit. I thought you'd vanished, you say. I did, briefly. Found a frog in my boot and took it as a divine sign to return. Understandable. He steps further in and looks around, noticing the strange stillness. Where's Marta gone? His brow furrows, with the miller's daughter and a map that glows. He nods, slowly processing. So, you're going after her. You say nothing. You need backup. You shake your head. I need someone to stay here. Keep the coals alive. The basin's rinsed. If I come back and find it cold, you'll haunt me relentlessly. He crosses his arms. I'd be honored. You hand him the daily ledger open to a fresh page. You can write barely. That's fine. Just draw faces for the tricky guests. He smirks. You light the main lantern one last time and give him a quick tour of the herb drawers. This one's for burns. This one's for bruises. This one's for regrets. He raises an eyebrow. Which drawer gets used most regrets? Especially on market days. Lucan stands in the doorway as you finish packing. You take just the essentials, soap oils, balm coin, towel, extra tunic, your smallest comb, and a thin iron rod that doubles as a hairpin and lockpick. You do not take the squirrel calendar Isolde gave you. Some burdens are too strange. The glowing soapstone you wrap in linen and tuck inside your chest, wrap close to the heart just in case it decides to heat up suddenly. As you shoulder your satchel, Lucan speaks again. What if you don't find her? You pause. Then I'll follow the heat until I do. He nods. You lock the bathhouse behind you, slipping the brass key into a crack in the third foundation stone, the one with the moss that smells like camphor. Only you and Marta know it's there. You step out into the twilight. The sun's barely holding on to the edge of the horizon, casting long shadows over cobblestone and chimney. The air smells like roasted barley and burned onions. A good omen. You head east, past the butcher's, where the pig heads always stare just a little too knowingly, past the scribe's corner where someone has chalked a limerick about itchy monks, past the old well where you toss in a coin, not the soapstone one, just a regular groat for luck. The glowing in your apron pulses gently. You glance down. The stone's markings, those 5 faint dots, are growing brighter with each step. You follow the pull. The trail leads you out of town over the ridge path lined with gorse and fox tracks. The wind here is colder, but not cruel, just reminding you that the world is large and your feet are very small. About an hour past the boundary stone, you reach the crossroads. 3 signs left: Cloister Mill. Right, Silvermere Bridge. Straight, no name. The stone warms gently against your skin. Straight it is. You follow the path, and as the trees thicken, so does the air. There's something familiar about it. The smell of heated water. The subtle whisper of flowing underground channels. Your instincts start firing. Another bathhouse. Hidden. You find it at dusk. Built into the side of a moss-covered hill, half-sunken, roofed with slate and thyme. No door, just a thick curtain of reeds. You push it aside and step inside. It's dark but warm. The basin here is wide and shallow, carved directly into the rock. A faint glow lines the edges, tiny mosses that seem to pulse in time with your breath. You kneel and touch the water. Hot, clean, and somehow ancient. You pull out the soapstone coin and hold it over the basin. It glows. Then a voice from behind. Took you long enough. You turn. Marta, wrapped in her traveling cloak hair, damp, holding a ladle like a scepter. You stare. I cleaned everything before you got here, she says. Couldn't have you judging my basins. You exhale half relief, half exasperation. I left the ladle drawer full for a reason, you know. She smiles. I figured you'd find the note. You glance around. No other guests. Just her, the basin, the moss, and the hum of something ancient beneath your feet. What is this place, you ask? She steps beside you and points to the far wall. They're carved into the stone, faint but legible. To cleanse is to remember. To heat is to awaken. It's one of the original, she says. Before guilds, before towns. Just heat, herbs, and memory. You sit beside her, letting the warmth seep into your bones. What now, you ask? She grins. Now we find the others. You and Marta sit in silence, side by side, on a stone ledge warmed by centuries of steam. There's no need to rush. The bathhouse hums with a quiet you can feel in your ribs like a low chord, struck in the walls, held and sustained by the warmth beneath your feet. She passes you a small cup bone etched with leaf patterns, filled with a bitter herbal brew that smells like boiled bark and ambition. You sip. Regret, instantly. Tastes like foot rinse. Close, she says, deadpan. It's made with a root used for calming hysteria in nuns. Effective, not even a little. You laugh into your sleeve. It feels surreal, this reunion after the long, strange day. The goats, the secret coins, the bathhouse guild that may or may not be real. You nudge her with your shoulder. You really ran off with the miller's daughter briefly. She's safe. Marta nods. Staying in a forest bathhouse near Norford. Old. Built into an elm tree. Smells like cedar and resolve. The locals think it's haunted by a spirit who soaks angry feet. You raise your eyebrows. That one might be you. She smirks. I left her there with the other attendants. They're preparing. Word spreading. Word Marta reaches into her cloak and produces something unexpected, a carved wooden basin no bigger than your palm. Set into the bottom is a disc of polished stone soapstone, again with the flame and basin symbol. You turn it over. On the back, a number. 4. There are more, she says. They're marked. Hidden in old rinse rooms, forest springs, even in collapsed Roman baths. This one's the 4th station. You hold it gently, feeling the soft groove of centuries worn into the basin's rim. Station. They call them the waters of memory. She shrugs. I call them unfinished bathhouses. You both sit there a moment longer, sipping terrible herbal tea and soaking your feet in ancient warmth. The stone in your chest pocket pulses once soft, steady like a heartbeat. So what's our next move, you ask? Marta pulls out a thin map, unrolls it on the warm floor. It's not parchment. It's leather. Waterproofed. Hand-inked. At first glance, it's a mess, dots, lines, symbols, basins, temperature marks, cryptic notes like too hot for horses or lie ghost. But then you spot them 5 dots in a star pattern. Just like on your soapstone, each dot is a station, she says. They're connected, like a circuit. And if we complete the circuit, she hesitates. They say something unlocks. Something about the original flame. You blink. You mean like... The first bathhouse, Marta shrugs. Maybe. Or just a really good scrub. A part of you wants to laugh. Another part knows you're already in too deep. You roll the map back up and stand. Then let's find the next one. But Marta doesn't move. She's looking toward the back wall where water trickles from a crack in the stone, flowing in a thin, clear line into the basin. Her brow furrows. What? Listen. You do. And at first there's nothing. Then a voice, not a whisper. Not exactly language. More like memory. Fragments. A laugh. A cry. A prayer. They say the basins remember, Marta murmurs. Not just events. People. Moments. You look around. The chamber's silence has shifted. It's deeper now. Listening. What happens if we wake all five, I don't know. The air suddenly feels heavier. Not ominous, just full. You return to the map and point to the next dot. Where's this one? She traces a line with her finger. West of here. A ruined cloister outside Tinbarrow. Locals use it to store turnips now. Classy. They don't know what's under it. You shoulder your satchel. The warmth of the basin clings to your skin, seeping into your bones like purpose. Marta dampens the fire, slightly douses one lamp, and writes a small sigil on the wall in soot and oil. A gentle M, just enough to let the next attendant know it was cared for. Outside, the air smells like wet stone and early wheat. The sky is pale gold, shot through with lavender clouds. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster screams like he's just remembered taxes exist. You walk. Together. Marta moves like she's never left. You fall into your old rhythm. Her on the right, you on the left. Trading remarks about tree bark rude patrons and who truly invented bath ladles. Halfway to the next village, you stop by a stream. Rinse your hands. She tosses a coin in. Not for luck. For memory. Who trained you? You ask. She smiles. An old woman in the mountain springs. She could peel an orange with steam alone. You raise an eyebrow. She told me heat cleans more than skin. You nod. It tracks. As you approach the next ridge, the stone pulses again. Stronger now. It tugs faintly toward the west. The air smells like ash and thyme. You don't know what's coming, but you trust the heat. As the sky darkens, you see it in the distance, the top of a broken spire, the edge of a collapsed wall, the silhouette of the ruined cloister, your next station. You grip the soapstone in your pocket and feel its answer in kind. Warm, ready, alive. The Tinbarrow cloister looks like something from a cautionary tale. One tower leans precariously like it's mid-swoon from having seen one too many poorly attended sermons. Ivy coils over the remaining archways like it's trying to politely erase history. The outer wall is crumbling in patches, as if the stones themselves grew tired of holding together, and the main cloister entrance half-blocked by what appears to be several dozen sacks of winter turnips. Marta lets out a long theatrical sigh. They really are using it as a root cellar. You nudge a sack with your foot. It squelches ominously. At least the temperature control's good. Should we knock? She deadpans. Announce we're here to excavate the spiritual plumbing. You give her the look. Fine. Let's find the back entrance, which is as usual both overgrown and covered in some kind of morally judgmental moss. You push through a hedge over a low wall and into what was once a meditation garden, now mostly brambles, and one aggressively territorial squirrel. There, beneath an arch half swallowed by vines, lies a trapdoor. The hinges are rusted. The wood is warped. The smell is exactly what you'd expect from a place that's been ignored since people thought leeches were a personality trait. You both stare at it. Coin says there's a basin underneath, you say. Marta pulls out the soapstone and holds it up. It pulses. That's enough. With a groan of effort and some creative use of a ladle as leverage, you pry open the hatch. Beneath is a narrow stairway, steep and lined with slick stones that haven't seen a dry day in decades. You light a stub of beeswax candle, Marta behind you, with a flask of rinse water and a frown that deepens with every step. The air gets warmer and wetter, not just damp but steam-laced. You feel it cling to your skin like a memory, ancient and eager. The stairs level out and the tunnel opens into a hidden chamber. You both stop short. It's not just a bathhouse, it's a temple. Carved from dark stone, the room curves in perfect concentric circles toward a central pool, wide, deep, and glowing faintly with a bluish sheen. Columns rise like petrified steam. Mosaics line the walls, most faded, but some still vibrant. You can make out figures, bathers, healers, flames, vessels overflowing. At the pool's edge sits a basin, smaller than yours back home, but unmistakably carved from the same material, smooth, heavy, veined with quartz and secrets. Marta whispers, "Number 3. You frown. 3, I thought this was 4. She points to the wall, a carved numeral. 3. You exhale slowly, then 1 still missing. She steps toward the basin and kneels. I'll check the mosaic. You check the water. You circle the edge and dip your fingers into the pool. Warm, not just from underground heat, from memory. You feel it an echo. Not a voice exactly, but a presence. 100 hands washed here. 1,000 stories spoken into steam. The water vibrates with old truth. You pull out your soapstone and hover it over the surface. It glows. Then the basin shifts, just slightly, enough to reveal something hidden in its base, a latch carved to look like a ripple. Marta gasps. You both kneel, press the latch. A soft click, then a panel opens in the stone floor. Inside a scroll, sealed, leather-wrapped, old but intact. You lift it gently, unroll it, just enough to read the title, Instructions for the 5th Basin. Your breath catches. This is the next step. Marta reads over your shoulder. It's real. All of it. You both laugh, quiet, disbelieving, reverent. Then footsteps, from behind. You spin scroll, clutched tight. A silhouette in the tunnel. Tall, hooded, moving like steam incarnate. You reach for your rinse rod. Marta steps forward. Password. The figure pauses. Then speaks. The basin remembers. You lower the rod. They step into the chamber. A woman, tall, cloaked in dark wool, with eyes like winter. She carries no weapon, no pack, just a bar of soap wrapped in cloth. Attendants, she says. You found the 3rd. We've been waiting. You ask. There's more of us. All trained, all watching. The 5th basin cannot be awakened without 5 hands, each tied to a basin. You and Marta exchange a look. How many have you found? Marta asks. 4, but 1 is missing. You feel the hairs rise on your arms. Missing. The woman nods. Disappeared. Last seen in the forest bathhouse Marta visited, left behind her basin key. But she took the soapstone coin. You stare at the pool. The path just grew longer and more urgent. The woman steps toward the mosaic. This one was hidden for a reason. They knew the 5th basin could only be opened if the others were truly remembered, not just found used, reawakened. What does it do, you ask? She smiles faintly. Cleanse memory, not just personal, collective. You blink. Wait like bathhouses were memory vaults. Of course, she says. Why do you think empires built them near every center of power to hold bodies? To hold truth. In the steam, in the stone. Heat stores what parchment forgets. You step back. The basin seems to ripple. So where's the 5th? Marta whispers. The woman pulls back her cloak and reveals a second scroll. Unrolls it. A new map. This one shows 5 basins in perfect configuration. But the 5th? It's not near here. It's not near anywhere. It's deep underground, beneath the oldest bathhouse in the land, the one no one dares visit, the one in the Capitol ruins. Its name has been scratched out, Just 2 words remain etched in the margin flame vault. The air thickens at the mention of the flame vault. Even the steam seems to pull back, curling warily along the mosaic floor, as if the room itself knows not to speak that name aloud. You and Marta exchange a glance, one that carries 100 shared jokes, 3 dozen soap mishaps, and now the heavy weight of destiny. "You're not serious," you say to the cloaked woman. "I am," she replies softly. "And so is the flame vault. Dead serious." You wince. That's not the best branding. She doesn't laugh. Figures. You lean against the carved basin, the scroll to the 5th basin still in your hand, waxy and vibrating faintly with old warmth. Marta crosses her arms. The vault was sealed before the plague. Before this plague, the woman corrects. It was buried during the fire sickness over 2 centuries ago, when the last known bathhouse keeper attempted to awaken all 5 basins at once, and failed. The woman hesitates. "We don't know." Marta scoffs. That's reassuring. You roll the scroll open further, revealing delicate illustrations more symbolic than instructional, showing attendants in ceremonial robes holding ladles like scepters, standing in a star pattern around a massive central basin. A basin carved from black stone, with something glowing inside it. You look at the woman. "What's in the center?" She responds immediately. "The first flame." You snort. "That's a little dramatic. It's literal," she says. "A fire that never extinguishes. Not fed by wood, fed by memory." You stare. "That's a myth," Marta mutters. "Most things are," the woman replies, "until the basin remembers." You glance at the glowing coin in your apron pocket. Once again it pulses stronger, this time sinking with your own breath. The basins are aligning. Time is closing in. You take a slow, steamy breath. "So what do you need us for?" you ask. The woman gestures to the scroll. You've touched 3 basins. You carry a soapstone that responded to the 4th. The 5th will only awaken to those bound by use. It needs us. You raise an eyebrow. "All 5 attendants." "Correct, but 1 is missing, so we'll need another." You tilt your head. "You can't just hire an attendant." "No," she says, "but you can train one." She pulls a worn pouch from her cloak and hands it to you. Inside a fresh soapstone coin, etched but uncharged. A blank slate. You look at Marta, who takes the coin and examines it under the torchlight. "We'll need to soak it, infuse it with basin memory." The woman nods. You sigh. "Where's the missing attendant's last location?" The woman pulls a second smaller scroll from her belt. The hollow basin. Abandoned, forest-bound, hidden behind a collapsed vineyard. "Of course." You press your fingers to your forehead. "Let me guess. No working rinse, no fire pit, possibly haunted." She smiles. "Possibly." Marta's already moving. "We'll need a portable herb kit. Soapstone cradle. Towel wringer. Do you have a goat?" You blink. "We are not bringing Buttercup. She's portable. She eats ledgers. Only the boring ones." The woman watches your exchange with mild fascination. You two are unusually lively. "We exfoliate regularly," you say. "Steam keeps us supple," Marta adds. You gather your things. The scroll, the blank coin, a satchel full of frankincense-dried lemon peel, and 1 emergency peppermint brick. Marta straps a rinse jug across her back, humming softly to herself. You pause at the basin. It's still glowing faintly. Beneath it, the old stone whispers with heat. You kneel beside it and run your hand along the edge where ancient script curls around the rim. You can't read it all, but a few words stand out: "To awaken memory, cleanse with flame." You whisper, "Why bathe at all?" And the basin answers, not in words, but in warmth. "Because to bathe is to begin again." You rise. The woman leads the way, out of the hidden chamber, through the vine-choked arch, past the turnip stacks, one of which has developed a distinct personality, and back into the woods. The sun is starting to dip low amber light slicing between tree trunks. The forest smells of pine mud and distant ash. As you walk, the woman turns to you. What's your name? You blink. You don't know I was told only your deeds. You smirk. Most people just call me, hey, you with the towel. Marta chuckles. Or the one who fixed my rash. You sigh. It's not important. Names fade, but basins don't. The woman accepts this. You walk on in silence. Eventually you see it. The hollow basin, or what's left of it. The entrance is choked with vines, collapsed timbers, and what looks like a very annoyed badger. A faint path leads around the rubble toward a rear entrance stone stairs worn smooth, half-covered in moss and creeping flowers. Inside, coolness. Not warmth, not yet. The air is dry, the stones brittle. You descend carefully. This bathhouse is older than any you've seen. Pre-carving, pre-tile, just stone and shadow and silence. You find the basin in the center. Cracked, empty, cold. Marta drops to one knee. We'll need to heat it manually. You unpack your kit. 1 charcoal brick, 1 beeswax flame cube, 1 pinch of dried bay leaf and rosemary. You light it, gently fanning the flame. As the basin begins to warm, the woman opens the final scroll and places it at the edge. Instructions in the old tongue. But you don't need to read it. Your hands already know. You lower the blank coin into the basin. It rests at the bottom like a sleeping seed. You whisper, remember. And slowly the stone glows. 1 pulse, then another. It is awakening. The glow deepens. Soft at first, barely a shimmer beneath the surface of the cracked basin, then stronger, more deliberate. The blank soapstone coin begins to shift in hue from dull gray to a pearlescent warmth that seems to come from within. Not fire exactly, not heat, more like recollection. The sensation of something ancient, once dormant, stretching as it remembers how to be alive. You and Marta crouch at the edge, silent, watching the transformation, like priests witnessing a miracle baked into lye and lemon balm. A breeze pushes through the bathhouse, though no door is open, and for a second the air smells like elderflower, and something older still. Rain on forgotten tiles. The woman in the dark cloak, your guide in all this, stands unmoving behind you, watching the ritual unfold with something between reverence and grim certainty. Then the basin hums. Not loudly, not even out loud. It hums into you, into your collarbone, your teeth, your memory. And the coin responds. It flares once gently like a heartbeat and settles into a steady rhythm. The 5th hand has been forged. You exhale. Long. Exhausted. Exhilarated. It's ready, Marta says. The cloaked woman steps forward, scoops the coin out with a towel, and slips it into a pocket inside her robe. Then the vault will accept us. You rise slowly. All 5 coins, all 5 basins, all 5 attendants. She nods. The doors will open at first light. Where, she doesn't answer. Instead, she reaches into her cloak one last time and hands you a tiny scroll. This one is bound with a string soaked in rinse water and tied with what you suspect is a hair from Buttercup. You untie it slowly as if it might spit steam in your face. It contains one thing, a map fragment. Not a full map. Just enough to guide you from a crumbled wall behind the capital city to a sealed stairwell known only to those who've read the herbal codex of the burned city. You know it well. It's barely a half-day's journey from here. You all return to the surface by moonlight, back through the vine tunnel, past the annoyed badger who glares like you interrupted his existential bath, over moss-slick stones and into the night air, now cold and crackling with something final. You sleep under the stars that evening. Marta insists on setting up a bath tarp windbreak, which collapses halfway through the night. You dream of pouring water from basin to basin, only they're speaking as you do, trading secrets in languages you don't know but somehow understand. At dawn you rise. 5 travel on foot. You, Marta, the cloaked woman, and 2 others who meet you at the forest edge, each carrying a basin token, each carrying a story of the heat they tend. You greet them with simple nods. Words feel too small. By midday, you reach the burned city, or what's left of it. The ruins stretch like rib bones from a dragon scorched, sunken, half swallowed by time and earth. Smoke still curls from crevices as if the fires that ruined it never stopped breathing. You navigate alleyways choked with ash and collapsed walls skirting broken aqueducts and stone skeletons of long-forgotten bathhouses. Marta murmurs, "They built 20 here. 20 basins, but only one survived, and finally you see it. A set of steps so worn they seem more idea than structure. They spiral downward, hidden behind the remains of what used to be a healer's hut. At the base, a stone door, carved with the same basin and flame emblem. 5 depressions. You and the other attendants exchange a look. One by one, you press your soapstone coins into place. Each slides in with a satisfying click, pulsing once with heat before fading into stillness. The door shudders. Stone shifts. Steam escapes like a sigh from history. The flame vault opens. What lies beyond is not what you expected. Not grandeur, not gold, not even a massive ceremonial bath. Just a long dark tunnel lit by ancient flame sconces that ignite as you step forward. The walls are smooth, seamless, whispering. Each step down feels like sinking into time. At the end, a chamber, wide, circular. In the center, the 5th basin. It's carved from obsidian, so black it reflects light like a mirror. Above it, suspended by chains of soapstone, burns a flame. Bright, silent, eternal. The first flame. You approach slowly, heart-thudding, soap-slick fingers clenched into fists. Your coin pulses wildly in your apron. Marta steps beside you. The others form the points of a star around the basin. You hold out your hand. Each of you does, and the basin responds. Light ripples across its surface. Steam rises, but the steam is filled with sound, voices, laughter, rituals, secrets. It is all here. Every conversation ever had in steam. Every name whispered in rinse. Every truth hidden in the warmth of a bathhouse when the outside world was too cold to speak. You close your eyes. You hear Marta's voice, yours, others. Stories that never made it to paper but never truly died. This basin remembers everything, and then it settles. The glow dims. The coins pop back out, cooled, job done. You look around at the others. You're all crying a little, or maybe it's just the steam. The first flame flickers once gently. You nod to it and whisper, "Thank you." You leave the vault in silence. Outside, the city is still in ruins. But now you carry something it doesn't know you took. A memory, a truth, a spark. You and Marta descend the hill slowly back toward the dirt road, back toward the world that still needs soap basins, and maybe just a little of the magic you've now seen. "What happens next?" she asks. You smile. We build. Now close your eyes. Picture the basin still warm. The steam rising, curling like gentle whispers from the past. The flame glows quietly above it, not roaring, not shouting, just steady. Like breath. Like a heartbeat. You lean back against smooth stone. The kind that cradles your spine and holds your weight without judgment. The air smells faintly of rosemary and thyme. The voices fade into soft echoes. No longer insistent. Just familiar. Loved. Around you, the basin hums low, no longer calling for action but offering comfort. The heat has done its work. The cleansing is complete, not just of skin, but of everything heavy. Let your breath slow. Let the warmth seep in. There's nothing more you need to do tonight. The bathhouse will wait. The memories are safe, and the flame still burns. End of script. Sweet dreams.